Hi everyone, we hope you're doing well. We're hanging in there though honestly, we haven't been getting much sleep lately. Today, we want to answer a question we get a lot: how do we publish our audiobooks? First, we post most audiobooks on Patreon as paid content. They stay paid for a few months. After that, they become free to listen to on Patreon forever. A few weeks later, we post them on other places like YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, X. Lately, things have been a bit slow in terms of new members. So we'd love your help. Please share our site with your friends or in places like Facebook groups, Twitter, X, Discord, Reddit, or novel forums. Even one share can really help us grow. Thanks so much for your support, who bore no personal grudge against him. Zabuza glanced at Haku, fully aware of his nature. Haku, you have to understand. If that kid doesn't die, we won't be able to complete this mission. We must succeed. Your compassion shouldn't be wasted on him. Haku remained quiet. Though Zabuza's words were harsh, they were true. He didn't want to kill, but he knew that, just as Zabuza said, they had to complete this mission. They had been constantly hunted by the hidden mist villages and struggled to take on missions while on the run. To survive, they had no choice but to complete Gado's task. Haku understood that, in the end, he'd have no alternative. As Haku and Zabuza were talking, the door was suddenly kicked open. Two samurai wielding long swords appeared at the entrance. Zabuza frowned, displeased by the intrusion. The two samurai trembled under Zabuza's cold gaze. They knew all too well how terrifying Zabuza was and quickly stepped aside. Behind them, Gado appeared, striding into the room without fear. As soon as he entered, Gado angrily shouted, "Zabuza! Why haven't you killed that old geezer, Tazuna, yet? Aren't you supposed to be a jonin from the hidden mist village? I've paid you such a high fee, so why haven't you completed the job?" Zabuza shot a cold glare at Gado, the chilling aura forcing him to take a step back. But Gado, emboldened by his status as the employer, stopped retreating and glared back. "I hired you because I heard you're strong, but you've disappointed me." Gado's voice was icy. Before Gado could continue ranting, he suddenly felt a sharp sting on his neck. Looking down, he saw a faint red line appear on his throat. The executioner's blade was pressed against it. Gado panicked, his body trembling. What are you doing? Are you trying to kill your employer? If you dare kill me, your reputation will be ruined. You'll never get another mission in the ninja world." Zabuza's voice was cold and filled with killing intent. "If you keep yammering, I'll cut your head off right now." Feeling the overwhelming murderous aura, Gado gulped. He was genuinely afraid now. He could feel it, Zabuza wasn't bluffing. This man would kill him without hesitation. Chapter 48. He had no intention of dying here. At the side, Haku stopped Zabuza, noticing the murderous intent in Zabuza's eyes. If Gado continued spouting nonsense, Zabuza really might kill him. "Lord Zabuza, after all, he is our employer," Haku said softly. Zabuza glanced at Haku but said nothing further, lowering the executioner's blade in his hand. However, the bone-chilling aura emanating from Zabuza made Gado fully grasp the terror of the seven swordsmen of the mist. Gado took a few steps back and muttered, "If you don't kill Tazuna before he finishes that bridge, don't expect to get the rest of your payment." After throwing out that threat, Gado quickly ran out of Zabuza's hideout. Although Gado was a vile man, he paled in comparison to someone like Zabuza, who had slaughtered all his classmates upon graduating from the Ninja Academy. Once Gado had fled, Zabuza turned to Haku. "Why did you stop me from killing him?" Haku walked to Zabuza's side and calmly explained, "Killing him would only cause chaos, which might lead to the hidden mists and tracking us down." Zabuza said nothing more. Meanwhile, in the forest behind Tazuna's house, Kakashi stood before Yorua, Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura. Looking at the four, he said, "Starting now, you'll begin your training. For chakra control, one of the best exercises is tree climbing." The moment Kakashi said this, Naruto burst out laughing. "Climbing trees? Kakashi-sensei, who can't climb a tree? How is that training?" Kakashi ignored Naruto's comment and walked to the base of a tall tree. Lifting one foot, he placed it against the tree trunk. Slowly, his other foot followed, sticking to the tree trunk. Now, Kakashi stood perpendicular to the tree. It looked as if he was just standing on flat ground. This sight left Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura utterly stunned. "Kakashi-sensei is actually stuck to the tree!" Naruto exclaimed in disbelief. Sasuke's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. Kakashi then walked step by step up to the top of the tree. He even hung upside down from a branch, his feet glued to the tree bark. This left Naruto and the others completely dumbfounded. Hanging upside down, Kakashi began explaining, "You need to gather chakra at the soles of your feet. The amount has to be precise. Too little, and you'll fall off. Too much, and you'll lose your grip. If you can do what I'm doing, your chakra control will improve significantly. After finishing his explanation, Kakashi descended from the tree. Now, go ahead and give it a try, he said, addressing the group. Naruto couldn't wait any longer, shouting as he rushed toward a tree. Sasuke walked to a tree silently, his expression focused. Sakura chose a tree between the two boys. Yoru, however, remained still, standing in place. He had already mastered this exercise. Kakashi didn't say anything about it either. He knew Yoru had already learned this technique long ago. This training was mainly for Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura. Naruto's first attempt ended with him falling flat on his back after just one step. He hit his head hard, a massive bump forming almost instantly. Ow! It hurts. It hurts so bad. Naruto cried, rolling around on the ground, clutching his head. Sasuke, on the other hand, managed a few steady steps up the tree. But midway, his chakra control faltered, and he fell. However, his landing wasn't nearly as embarrassing as Naruto's. To everyone's surprise, Sakura succeeded on her very first try. She was now sitting comfortably on a tree branch, waving cheerfully at the others. Kakashi-sensei. Look! She called out. I made it up. Naruto, still writhing on the ground in pain, looked up at Sakura sitting confidently on the tree. His face was full of admiration, though he couldn't help but yell, Sakura is amazing. As expected of the woman I've set my eyes on. Even so, deep down, he felt a little bitter. Although Sakura was the girl he liked, jealousy still crept in. Sasuke glanced at Sakura and frowned. Unlike Naruto, Sasuke wasn't jealous of her. He had already known that Sakura's chakra control was excellent. Right now, he was debating whether to ask her for tips, but he couldn't bring himself to do it. After all, Sasuke usually carried himself with an aloof demeanor. At the Ninja Academy, he was always the top student. To ask Sakura for advice now would be a blow to his pride. Kakashi looked at Naruto and Sasuke, smiling. I didn't expect Sakura to be the first one to succeed. As expected, when it comes to chakra control, Sakura is still the best. Someone keeps saying they're going to be Hokage, but it looks like that's all talk, he added, glancing at Naruto. Then, Kakashi turned his attention to Sasuke. Seems like the Uchiha clan isn't all that exceptional after all. His words directly targeted Naruto and Sasuke. Of course, Kakashi wasn't genuinely trying to insult them, it was a form of reverse psychology. Both Naruto and Sasuke had strong egos. This method was the most effective way to motivate them. As expected, Naruto was the first to react. Kakashi-sensei, that was just a fluke. I'll get it right next time. Sasuke, on the other hand, stayed silent, quietly moving back to the tree to try again. When Naruto approached a tree, he noticed Yoru standing still next to Kakashi, not participating. Puzzled, he asked, Yoru, aren't you going to train? Before Yoru could reply, Kakashi answered on his behalf, Yoru has already mastered it. He succeeded on his very first try. Naruto's mouth twitched. He really shouldn't have asked. Knowing full well that Yoru was much stronger than the rest of them, it was obvious he had already trained in this technique before. Sasuke said nothing and focused on climbing the tree again. Sakura, still sitting on a branch, looked down at the two boys. She also noticed Yoru. Yoru must have mastered it a long time ago. That's for sure, he's so strong. What a strange person. He's so outstanding, yet I barely noticed him at the Ninja Academy. As memories of the 2 times Yoru had saved her surfaced, Sakura felt a sense of fondness toward him. Of course, it was the kind of affection one felt for a friend. After all, Yoru was practically her savior. Now, she was deeply curious about him. Even though they had been classmates for 6 years, Sakura realized she knew almost nothing about him. While Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura continued their training, Kakashi turned to Yoru and said, they'll work on their exercises, and I'll teach you something else. Yoru nodded. The two left the group and walked to a lake a few hundred meters away. Standing by the lakeside, Kakashi sighed. This reminds me of that night. We were by a lake just like this one. If your chakra hadn't gone out of control back then, you would have succeeded. Yoru nodded slightly. It was unexpected, but I think I can manage it now. Oh? You think you've mastered it? Yoru glanced at Kakashi and smiled. Shall I give it a try? Kakashi took a few steps back. If your chakra goes out of control again, the consequences will be too great. Yoru shook his head. It won't. I'm confident I can succeed this time. Kakashi hesitated for a moment before nodding. Go ahead and try. I'll keep an eye on the surroundings. After saying this, Kakashi retreated several dozen meters. The range of Yoru's chakra outburst that night had been enormous. Kakashi wasn't taking any chances by standing too close. Chapter 49. Kakashi retreated about 100 meters away. Yoru walked to the edge of the lake. If he lost control again here, the water in the lake could help mitigate the force of the explosion. Standing on the lake's surface, Yoru began to gather his chakra. He focused it into his hands. In an instant, a massive amount of chakra gathered in Yoru's palms. That chakra quickly transformed into lightning. ZT crackle. Crackle. Golden arcs of electricity erupted from Yoru's hands. The lightning snaked around his arms like wild, untamed creatures. Within a radius of over 10 meters, countless bolts of electricity crackled and swirled around him. The lightning bolts started through the air like serpents, and Yoru stood at their center. Even though it was broad daylight, the intense golden glow of the lightning illuminated Yoru's position like a blazing sun. Standing over 100 meters away, Kakashi gulped at the sight. Even though I've seen this before, it's still overwhelming. This isn't just Chidori anymore. Both the form of the lightning and the amount of chakra far surpass the standard Chidori. I wonder how powerful it is. Kakashi's Sharingan had already activated. It was clear that Yoru's Chidori was fundamentally different from his own, far more powerful. Despite the dramatic display, the sound wasn't as loud as Kakashi expected. The piercing crackle of lightning only carried a few dozen meters before fading. After all, Chidori was designed as a stealth attack technique, too much noise would ruin its primary advantage. Yoru watched as the surrounding lightning arcs gradually converged into the palm of his hand. The lightning serpents that had been crackling around him merged into his palm, one by one. Bit by bit, all the electricity condensed into the center of Yoru's hand. The golden lightning trembled violently. Now, the golden radiance around him faded, revealing Yoru's figure once more. All the lightning had concentrated in his palm. Kakashi was stunned. He managed to gather all the scattered chakra into his hand? That level of chakra control is insane, even I can't do that. This kid always finds a way to surprise me. Although the lightning in Yoru's hand seemed smaller than before, Kakashi could tell that its power had only increased. The condensed lightning carried far more destructive energy than its earlier, dispersed form. Yoru looked at the concentrated lightning in his hand and then turned his gaze toward Kakashi in the distance. When Kakashi noticed Yoru looking at him, he froze. What's that look for? What is this kid planning? He didn't have to wonder for long. A faint smile curved Yoru's lips, and with a forceful push from his legs, he launched himself into the air. Like a cannonball, he soared dozens of meters above the lake's surface in an instant. The ground where he had leapt from shattered, leaving a web of cracks spanning over 10 meters. High above the lake, Yoru raised his hand, aiming the Chidori at the water below. Lightning style, Chidori. With a loud shout, Yoru unleashed his technique. In an instant, his figure transformed. A golden bolt of lightning shot toward the lake. Crack. ZZT. Boom. In an instant, the ground within several hundred meters shook violently. The wide lake, spanning several hundred meters, erupted in a massive explosion. The water within it was instantly vaporized by the terrifying lightning, rising into the air as mist. As a flash of golden light faded, the center of the lake, now several hundred meters wide, revealed a massive crater over 100 meters across. All the water in the crater had been blown away. It took over 10 seconds for the displaced water to slowly flow back into the massive hollow in the lake's center. By this time, Yoru had already landed on the shore. Faint golden sparks of electricity still danced around his hand. Watching the water gradually converge toward the center, Yoru chuckled. Kakashi-sensei, what do you think? Not bad, right? Kakashi had approached Yoru by now. He glanced at the faint arcs of electricity still flickering around Yoru's right hand, then at the lake water flowing back into the crater. Kakashi's mouth twitched. Is this really the Chidori I taught you? He looked at Yoru with a face full of doubt. Yoru smiled. Of course it is. Pretty good, huh? Kakashi's lips twitched again. Pretty good? This is on a whole other level. Even my Rai Hidden Mist Village can't reach this level of destructive power. Not to mention your attack speed is faster than mine. This jutsu's destructive power is definitely at an S-rank level. Yoru blinked in surprise. S-rank? Really? He wasn't entirely sure. While he knew his Chidori was powerful, S-rank destructive power was a standard typically reserved for Kage-level jutsu. Kakashi nodded seriously. Definitely S-rank. My Rai Hidden Mist Village is powerful and also classified as S-rank, but it doesn't have this level of destructive force. Yoru pondered for a moment before saying, actually, while I was releasing Chidori earlier, I thought about modifying it slightly to make it work as a long-range jutsu. Kakashi froze for a second. A long-range jutsu? Yoru nodded. Yeah, I have an idea, but I'm not sure if it'll work. Let's hear it. Kakashi didn't dismiss the idea as a whim. He knew Yoru had a strong understanding of ninjutsu. Yoru quickly explained Sasuke's Chidori Sharp Spear and Chidori Senbon concepts to Kakashi. Kakashi nodded. Not bad. The idea is definitely feasible. But if you go that route, Chidori's power will be reduced. Kakashi, as expected, immediately identified the trade-offs of the techniques. Yoru chuckled. Sacrificing power to increase range is worth it, though. Kakashi nodded in agreement. These adaptations wouldn't offer much benefit to me, but for you, they could be incredibly useful. Yeah, since I have a larger chakra reserve and my ninjutsu are inherently more powerful, even sacrificing some power would still leave the technique strong enough. Yoru added. After some discussion, Yoru decided to try out his modifications. He didn't really know how Sasuke had developed his techniques back then, but he had already come up with his own method for adapting Chidori. Whether or not it matched Sasuke's didn't matter to him. This time, Kakashi didn't distance himself from Yoru. Judging by how Yoru had controlled Chidori earlier, it was clear he had gained mastery over the power inside him. Though Yoru's speed in mastering it had exceeded Kakashi's expectations, he had no reason to doubt it. Since Yoru could now control his inner power, Kakashi felt there was no need to stand far away. Standing by the lake, Yoru raised his right hand. In an instant, countless arcs of electricity coalesced in his palm. It was Kakashi's first time seeing Yoru's lightning up close. The sheer power emanating from the golden lightning sent chills down Kakashi's spine, despite him being an elite Jonin. Watching Yoru's focused expression, Kakashi couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. Yoru's growth is so fast. Honestly, I barely have anything left to teach him. After all, Yoru had already mastered Kakashi's strongest jutsu. Now, all Kakashi had left was his Sharingan. And, well, he wasn't about to pluck that out and hand it to Yoru. So, when it came to ninjutsu, Kakashi felt like he had nothing more to offer. At least not in terms of techniques. However, he knew that in terms of experience as a ninja, Yoru still had plenty to learn. Chapter 50. Yoru didn't notice Kakashi's expression of pride and relief. After gathering his chakra, he followed the method he envisioned, concentrating the energy into a single point and then firing it outward. Lightning style, Chidori Sharp Spear. ZZT. Swoosh. Boom. A golden beam of light shot out from Yoru's hand in an instant. The golden lightning streaked across the distance, piercing through the forest several hundred meters away and carving a gap tens of meters wide on the opposite side of the lake. The trees within the gap were all severed by the lightning. Dozens of large trees collapsed to the ground, their cut surfaces as smooth as mirrors. Kakashi was stunned. This jutsu is unexpectedly powerful. Kakashi genuinely hadn't anticipated such destructive force. The long range was one thing, but the impact at the far end of the attack had managed to clear a vacuum zone tens of meters wide in the forest. Originally, Kakashi had assumed that the Chidori Sharp Spear's range would be about 10 meters at best. But Yoru had achieved a range of several hundred meters, while still maintaining S-rank destructive power at the farthest point. What's more, the speed of the attack was astonishing, on par with natural lightning. Ordinarily, the speed of lightning created with chakra couldn't match that of real lightning in nature. But the lightning Yoru had just unleashed could definitely rival natural lightning in speed. In terms of destructive potential, Yoru's modified Chidori Sharp Spear had undoubtedly reached the level of an S-rank jutsu. And it wasn't just powerful, it was incredibly practical. Its range was immense. Hundreds of meters, fired instantaneously. And judging by Yoru's condition, it didn't seem to consume much chakra. Even Yoru himself was surprised by the strength of the jutsu. He even felt that its utility far surpassed that of the original Chidori. After all, if you could attack from a distance, why bother with close combat? The power is beyond what I expected. Yoru muttered, frowning. Kakashi chuckled. You don't seem very happy about it. Yoru shook his head. I'm happy, but it feels surreal. My control over my power is still too weak. I can't fully grasp the exact strength of the jutsu I release. In a battle, that kind of weakness could be fatal. Kakashi was momentarily taken aback. Looking at Yoru's troubled expression, he didn't know what to say. If any other ninja had this kind of power, their ego would probably be through the roof. But not only was Yoru not arrogant, he was already keenly aware of his own weaknesses. No wonder you were so quiet during your 6 years at the academy. Mastering control isn't something that happens overnight. You've got plenty of time, don't rush yourself. Yoru nodded, realizing he had been overthinking things. There was no way he could master all his power instantly. Do you still have enough chakra? The next jutsu is going to require a lot too. Kakashi asked with concern. After all, Yoru had already unleashed 2 jutsu with S-rank power, both of which were highly chakra intensive. If it had been Kakashi, Just one of those techniques would have drained his chakra reserves completely. Yet Yorua didn't look the least bit tired. Kakashi couldn't help but marvel at Yorua's immense chakra reserves. Right now, your chakra reserves might rival Naruto's, Kakashi remarked with amazement. While channeling chakra, Yorua responded, that's unlikely. After all, Naruto has the 9 tails sealed inside him. The fact that Naruto was the 4th Hokage's son was known to only a select few in the village. However, the entire village was aware that he was the 9 tails Jinchuriki, which was the main reason he was ostracized. Almost every Jinchuriki faced similar treatment. Until a Jinchuriki gained full control over their tailed beast, villagers would always keep their distance. After all, a Jinchuriki losing control could result in a catastrophic rampage, leading to widespread destruction. An unmastered Jinchuriki was akin to a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any moment. Hearing Yorua casually factor the 9 tails chakra into Naruto's strength, Kakashi sighed. The 9 tails was an unparalleled source of chakra. Who could possibly rival that? Not even the entire ninja world combined had chakra reserves greater than the 9 tails. Kakashi wasn't sure exactly how much chakra the first Hokage had possessed, but he doubted it exceeded the 9 tails. In truth, the first Hokage's chakra reserves did match those of the 9 tails. As soon as Yorua finished speaking, lightning began to coalesce in his hands. Lightning style, Chidori Senbon. ZZT. Crack. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In an instant, Yorua's lightning transformed into hundreds of golden needles before him. At Yorua's command, the needles shot forward, piercing through the air like a torrential downpour. The golden lightning needles traveled hundreds of meters, vanishing into the forest on the opposite side of the lake. Unlike Chidori's sharp spear, Chidori Senbon relied on its piercing power rather than explosive damage. Yorua suggested, let's head over and check the results. He sprinted across the lake as he spoke. Kakashi followed close behind, curious about how this technique compared to Chidori's sharp spear. Upon reaching the forest on the other side, the two examined the tree trunks. Each tree was riddled with numerous small, charred holes. Yorua inspected the damage and nodded with satisfaction. The piercing power is pretty good. It can still penetrate through trunks this thick even from several hundred meters away. If it were a human body, the result wouldn't be much different from these trees. Having already witnessed the devastating power of Chidori's sharp spear earlier, Kakashi wasn't as surprised by the damage caused by Chidori Senbon. After inspecting more than a dozen trees, Yorua determined the technique's upper limit. It can pierce through about 15 trees. Not bad for piercing power. He concluded with a nod. Kakashi gave a wry smile. Not bad. Yorua, you do realize this is a lightning-based Senbon attack fired from hundreds of meters away, and it can still punch through over a dozen massive trees? The destructive power is downright terrifying. If you can master these 2 jutsu and use them flexibly in combat, even elite Jonin won't stand a chance against you. A 12-year-old elite Jonin. The thought alone is astonishing. I wasn't exaggerating before, was I? Your talent far surpasses mine. At this point, your raw strength already exceeds Kion Toichi's. Yorua shook his head. These are just jutsu. I wouldn't say my combat experience can match Toichi sensei's. Even though he had mastered 3 S-rank jutsu, Yorua remained level-headed. Kion Toichi was an Anbu Jonin, and his combat experience far surpassed Yorua's. Kakashi looked at Yorua's calm demeanor and sighed in exasperation. Your biggest flaw is that you're too cautious. Even if your combat experience doesn't match Toichi's, your raw strength has already surpassed his to the point where his experience can't make up the difference. It won't be long before you surpass even me, Kakashi said with a touch of melancholy. Still, he felt no jealousy toward Yorua. On the contrary, he felt immense pride. After all, Kakashi viewed Yorua as a personal disciple and held high hopes for him. His aspiration was for Yorua to grow into a ninja as powerful and remarkable as the 4th Hokage. And with Yorua's temperament and talent, Kakashi had no doubt that he would achieve it. Chapter 51 Just the 3 jutsu Yorua has mastered are enough for any Jonin to treat as trump cards, Kakashi remarked. And the power Yorua unleashes with them far surpasses what an ordinary Jonin could achieve. The destructive capabilities of Chidori's sharp spear and Chidori Senbon were particularly staggering. With their combination of range, speed, and devastating piercing power, these jutsu had already reached S-rank status. In fact, even among S-rank techniques, they stood out as exceptionally powerful. Many ordinary S-rank jutsu couldn't hold a candle to them. Kakashi sighed. This kind of mastery is unique to you. For most other ninjas, even Jonin, one attempt at these jutsu would completely drain their chakra reserves. And it's not just about chakra quantity, no one else could achieve the same level of effect. Not even me. Kakashi wasn't exaggerating. Yorui's jutsu drew on a form of natural energy, yet it wasn't quite the same as Sage Chakra. The difference lay in how Yorui's chakra was imbued with intent, making it almost alive. This was similar to the first Hokage's wood style, but neither Yoru nor Kakashi realized it. Yorua shook his head. Even for me, using these two jutsu is taxing. With my current chakra reserves, I can probably manage them only 2 more times. So you're saying your chakra reserves allow you to use S-rank jutsu 5 times? Kakashi asked in disbelief. He had assumed Yorui's chakra was completely spent, especially after unleashing 3 consecutive S-rank jutsu. Judging by the power of Yorui's techniques, they consumed far more chakra than standard S-rank jutsu. Yet somehow, Yorua still had reserves to spare. This level of chakra capacity far exceeded Kakashi's own. Realizing this, Kakashi asked, "Does that mean your chakra reserves have already surpassed mine?" He clearly remembered that just a few days ago, Yorua's chakra reserves had been smaller than his. Even if Yorua's chakra was enhanced by natural energy, this level of growth seemed impossible. Yorua paused to sense his own chakra. "I think my chakra is slightly greater than yours now, Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi was momentarily at a loss for words. "How is your chakra growing so quickly?" Yorua considered this. "Maybe it's because my body is still unlocking hidden reserves of chakra." Kakashi nodded thoughtfully. It wasn't an unreasonable explanation. After all, Yorua's body did contain some mysterious power. "Can I use my Sharingan to examine your chakra flow?" Kakashi asked. He was concerned. Such rapid growth in chakra reserves could be either a blessing or a curse. If the chakra expanded too quickly, Yorua's body might not be able to handle the strain. The last thing Kakashi wanted was for Yorua's immense chakra to harm him. Yorua nodded. He had no secrets to hide regarding his body, and his chakra had indeed increased several-fold in recent days. Even if he refused, Kakashi could still check using his Sharingan. There was no stopping that. With Yorua's consent, Kakashi activated his Sharingan. In an instant, he saw the overwhelming torrent of chakra within Yorua. This is terrifying. It's incomprehensible. Your chakra reserves are already approaching Naruto's level. And everyone knew just how vast Naruto's chakra reserves were. The amount of chakra Naruto has isn't just his own, it also includes the Nine Tails chakra. Kakashi thought. Even though the majority of the Nine Tails chakra was sealed by the 4th Hokage, the 8 trigram seal allowed the chakra that leaked from the Nine Tails to gradually merge with Naruto's own chakra reserves. Over the years, this leakage had significantly boosted Naruto's chakra capacity. At just 12 years old, Naruto's chakra reserves were already more than double Kakashi's. If the Nine Tails full chakra reserves were included, the difference would be in the hundreds of times. Yet now, Yorua's chakra reserves were approaching Naruto's level. This meant Yorua currently had about twice as much chakra as Kakashi. And just a few days ago, Yorua's reserves had been less than Kakashi's, merely at the level of an average Jonin. In only a few days, that had changed dramatically. And this was after Yorua had just used 3 S-rank jutsu. Notably, the 3 jutsu Yorua unleashed were far more powerful than Kakashi's Rikiri. If Yorua hadn't expended his chakra on those 3 jutsu, his reserves would have already surpassed Naruto's, excluding the Nine Tails chakra. What level of power was this? This was unquestionably Kage level. And Yorua was only 12 years old. But the more Kakashi thought about it, the more concerned he became. According to everything he knew, chakra required the body as a vessel. If Yorua's chakra had expanded so quickly in such a short time, could his body withstand it? Kakashi looked at Yorua with a worried expression and asked, "Do you feel anything uncomfortable right now? Increasing your chakra reserves so much in such a short time must be hard on your body." Seeing Kakashi's concern, Yorua smiled and reassured him, "Don't worry. I think it's because of what happened that night when my chakra went out of control. My physical condition improved significantly, and my chakra reserves surged since then." Yorua knew that if he didn't provide a reasonable explanation, Kakashi would grow suspicious. Kakashi considered this explanation and found it plausible. He had always sensed that Yorua's body contained some mysterious and powerful force. Perhaps that night's outburst had triggered it. Occurrences like this weren't uncommon in the ninja world. Unique physical constitutions and latent powers appeared from time to time. However, it was rare to see someone as exceptional as Yorua. Still, Kakashi could understand it. "I'm still concerned. If your chakra keeps growing at this rate, your body might not be able to handle it. Maybe I should seek out Lord Jiraiya. He might be able to guide you in learning Sage Mode. By mastering it, you could fully control the power within you." Yorua froze for a moment. Lord Jiraiya. Seeing Yorua's puzzled expression, Kakashi assumed he didn't know who Jiraiya was. Even though Kakashi had mentioned him before, it was understandable if Yoru, being of the younger generation, wasn't familiar with the legendary Sannin. In truth, Yoru wasn't confused about Jiraiya's identity. He was just unsure why Kakashi thought Jiraiya would be willing to teach him Sage Mode. Yoru had no connection to Jiraiya, and Sage Mode wasn't something just anyone could learn. He doubted Jiraiya would take the time to train him. Jiraiya had trained Naruto because Naruto was the son of his student, the fourth Hokage. It made sense for Jiraiya to guide Naruto as his grand student. But Yoru had no such ties to Jiraiya. Kakashi began explaining, Lord Jiraiya is one of the legendary Sannin, renowned throughout the ninja world. During the Second Shinobi World War, he, along with Orochimaru and Lady Tsunade, earned the title of the Sannin of the Leaf. The strength of these three is at the Kage level. They're incredibly powerful. Lord Jiraiya is a disciple of the third Hokage and the teacher of the fourth Hokage. He is also a master of Sage Mode. The third Hokage once mentioned that your body might have the natural constitution of a sage. That means the chakra within you is likely Sage Chakra. I believe that if you learn Sage Mode, you'll be able to control your chakra fully and prevent it from harming your body. Chapter 52 Yoru looked at Kakashi, momentarily at a loss for words. Although he thought Kakashi's optimism was naive, there was no way Jiraiya would train him in Sage Mode. He could sense the sincerity behind Kakashi's words. Kakashi genuinely hoped Yoru could control the power within him and was truly concerned for his safety. At this moment, Kakashi was treating Yoru as if he were his personal disciple. Yoru fell silent. Kakashi, thinking Yoru might not have understood, repeated himself. Yoru waved his hand. Kakashi-sensei, I understand what you're saying. I just don't think Lord Jiraiya would be willing to teach me Sage Mode. You said Sage Mode is a rare and powerful technique that few people can master. Do you think Lord Jiraiya would take the time to train someone like me, who has no personal connection to him? Seeing Yoru's doubtful expression, Kakashi smiled. Lord Jiraiya is quite a warm-hearted person. If he sees your immense potential and considers the future of the village, he wouldn't refuse. Yoru turned to Kakashi, an amused but skeptical smile on his face. What if he sees my power as a threat to the village and decides he doesn't want me mastering Sage Mode? I mean, if the third Hokage learns about my current strength, I doubt he'd remain as calm as before. Kakashi froze. He had been so focused on Yoru's chakra that he hadn't considered the third Hokage's perspective. Given what he knew of Jiraiya, it wasn't entirely impossible that Jiraiya might share the same concerns Yoru had voiced. He might view Yoru's rapid growth as a potential threat to the village. After a long silence, Kakashi said, but the Chunin exams will be happening soon. The third Hokage is bound to find out about your abilities. Yoru shrugged nonchalantly. Then I'll leave it up to fate. He couldn't think of a better solution. Hidden Leaf Village had plenty of ways to detect abnormalities in his chakra. The Hyuga clan, the Yamanaka clan, and sensory-type ninja could all identify the peculiarities in Yoru's chakra reserves. There was no way to avoid detection. So Yoru had already decided not to bother trying to hide. He was surprisingly calm about it. Defecting wasn't something he'd consider unless he was pushed into a corner. After all, he had no desire to roam the ninja world as an outcast. Seeing Yoru's indifferent attitude, Kakashi grew even more concerned. We can't let the third Hokage find out you've mastered those powerful jutsu you just used. Even though I trust the third Hokage, I don't think he would be completely at ease with you. Your chakra reserves are immense, but as long as he doesn't know you've mastered those devastating jutsu, he probably won't act against you. Don't worry. As long as you're in Hidden Leaf Village, you've got me and Tenzo on your side. If the third Hokage tries to do anything against you, we won't stand for it. Yoru only smiled at Kakashi's words. He knew Kakashi's loyalty to the village would always come first. Yoru didn't believe Kakashi would betray Hidden Leaf Village for his sake. Still, Yoru wasn't overly concerned. If he truly couldn't stay in Hidden Leaf Village, then, even though he didn't want to become a rogue ninja, he'd have no other choice. While he didn't have lofty ambitions, he certainly didn't want his life to end prematurely. Just moments ago, Kakashi had been envisioning a bright future for Yoru. Now, that vision felt much less certain. He had newfound determination. Right now, Kakashi's only thought was how to protect Yoru. He didn't want Yoru to end up like Yamato, spending the rest of his life in the shadows of the Anbu. Nor did he want Yoru to live under constant surveillance, like the Jinchuriki of the Nine-Tails. If one were to talk about the most miserable Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, it wasn't Naruto who had it the worst. It was his mother, Uzumaki Kushina. As someone from another village, Kushina had been under Anbu surveillance until she married Minato Namikaze. For most of that time, her home was surrounded by a barrier, restricting her from freely leaving its confines. One could only imagine how suffocating her life was. Naruto, at the very least, had complete freedom in Hidden Leaf Village, too much freedom, in fact. He could even graffiti the Hokage rock without consequence. For any ordinary person, such an act would have resulted in immediate punishment, if not imprisonment. But due to the third Hokage's deliberate leniency, Naruto was allowed to be as free-spirited as he wished. When it came to loneliness, all Jinchuriki experienced it. But in terms of freedom, few had it as much as Naruto. What was even more astonishing was that despite the Nine Tails rampage killing so many villagers' loved ones, no one in Hidden Leaf Village ever attempted to assassinate Naruto. By comparison, Killer Bee had frequently been targeted by assassins from his own village, all because the previous Eight Tails Jinchuriki had caused casualties during a rampage. The fact that Hidden Leaf villagers only ostracized Naruto and never attacked him showed an incredible level of restraint. Being under Anbu surveillance, however, was far from a pleasant experience. Having spent a long time in the Anbu himself, Kakashi knew this all too well. After all, he had been assigned by the fourth Hokage to protect Uzumaki Kushina. While the mission was officially to protect her, it also served as a form of surveillance. Of course, Minato had no ill intentions toward Kushina, he was only concerned about the possibility of her losing control due to her pregnancy. But regardless of the reason, being under Anbu surveillance was deeply uncomfortable. Kakashi didn't want Yorua to live that kind of life. That said, he couldn't think of a concrete way to help Yorua. The best he could do was to conceal the truth from the third Hokage and ensure that he didn't learn about Yorua's mastery of 3 immensely powerful S-rank jutsu. Yorua, however, wasn't overly concerned. After all, he was still a Hidden Leaf Village ninja. As long as he didn't openly show hostility toward the village, the third Hokage wouldn't act against him. If Hidden Leaf Village were the kind of village that eliminated every prodigy out of fear, it would have collapsed long ago. Looking at Kakashi, Yorua smiled. There's no need to worry so much. I don't think the third Hokage would go that far. Kakashi's expression grew complicated. He didn't share Yorua's confidence in the third Hokage. Having spent so much time in the Anbu, Kakashi was well aware of the third Hokage's darker side. But Yorua wasn't wrong. At the end of the day, Yorua was a Hidden Leaf Village ninja. Aside from the Uchiha clan, the third Hokage had never treated other Hidden Leaf Village ninjas excessively harshly. Certainly not as extreme as Danzō. Even Danzō, for all his extremism toward the Uchiha clan, didn't meddle with other Hidden Leaf Village ninjas unless they interfered with his ambition to become Hokage. In fact, he refused to recruit individuals into Root who didn't align with his ideology, no matter how talented they were. Take Might Guy, for example. Guy had even requested to join Root, but Danzō rejected him outright. The third Hokage and Danzō's hostility toward the Uchiha stemmed from their inheritance of the second Hokage's beliefs. They viewed the Uchiha clan as inherently extreme, as ticking time bombs of instability. The Nine Tails incident only exacerbated this perception. After all, when the Nine Tails attacked, its Sharingan eyes with 3 Tomoe were clearly visible to nearly every villager that night. Not suspecting the Uchiha would have been impossible. But Yorua was different. He was a civilian-born ninja with no clan influence. At worst, he would grow to become a figure akin to the fourth Hokage. This was why Yorua wasn't overly worried. The third Hokage, while occasionally shrewd, wasn't irrational to the point of eliminating talented ninjas just because of their gifts. Chapter 53 Originally, Kakashi had planned to wait until Jiraiya returned to the village and then ask him to take Yorua to Mount Myabaku to learn Senjutsu. But after the conversation he just had with Yorua, Kakashi decided to drop the idea. Maybe during missions, I can search for the locations of the 3 Great Sage Lands. There should be people in the ninja world who know where they are. Although asking Jiraiya was no longer an option, Kakashi wasn't ready to give up on finding a place where Yorua could train in Senjutsu. He was worried that if Yorua's chakra continued to grow unchecked, his body wouldn't be able to handle it. Yorua walked to the lakeside and said calmly, I think you're overthinking this. I don't feel any discomfort at all. With my current physical condition, handling this amount of chakra isn't a problem. Yorua was fully aware of the chakra situation in his body. If his body couldn't handle the amount of chakra, it wouldn't have manifested there in the first place. When the day came that his body could no longer sustain more chakra, it would simply mean that the growth of his chakra had reached its limit. For now, however, Yorua's chakra was still doubling every day. That said, he could sense that in just a few days, the growth would slow down. It wouldn't continue increasing at this exponential rate for much longer. Kakashi walked up beside Yorua and said seriously, you can't take this lightly. Chakra isn't something to be careless about. There have been plenty of shinobi in the ninja world who ended up seriously injured because their physical condition couldn't keep up with their chakra. Oh, speaking of the 3 Great Sage Lands, it's about time you got yourself a summoning animal. Yorua glanced at Kakashi. I don't think I need one just yet. Kakashi sighed in resignation. It's a pity my summoning beasts are more suited for reconnaissance. They're not quite right for you. The thought of his future summoning beasts being a pack of ninja dogs made Yorua feel uneasy. How about signing a summoning contract with my beasts for now? Summoning beasts weren't exclusive to one person. For instance, Sasuke had contracts with 2 different types of summons. It all came down to whether the user's chakra was sufficient to summon them. Yorua gave an awkward smile. I think I'll pass. Your summoning beasts probably aren't a good fit for me. Kakashi thought for a moment and nodded. Fair enough. Once we find the 3 Great Sage Lands, you can sign a summoning contract with one of them if the opportunity arises. The 4th Hokage's summoning contract was with Mount Mayabaku. And so was Jiraiya-sama's. Yorua frowned in confusion and asked, Kakashi-sensei, considering you were the 4th Hokage's student, shouldn't your summoning beasts be the same as his? Jiraiya-sama was the 4th Hokage's teacher, and their summons were the same. Why didn't you inherit that? Kakashi smiled. Because my summoning beasts suit me perfectly. There's no need for me to have another type of summoning beast. Wait, do you already know what my summoning beasts are? Kakashi's eyes narrowed as he looked at Yorua with a playful smile. He suddenly realized that when Yorua had mentioned his summons earlier, it sounded like he already knew what they were. Yorua didn't hide it and admitted openly, yeah, I figured it out when I looked up your records. In Hidden Leaf Village, information about Kakashi's summoning beasts wasn't exactly a secret. The library held information on many renowned shinobi that anyone could look up. However, these records only contained publicly known information. So, after hearing this, Kakashi didn't find it strange at all. It was just that Yorua seemed quite dismissive of his summoned creatures. So, you don't like my summoning beasts, huh? Kakashi asked, his gaze carrying a hint of chill as he looked at Yorua. Yorua felt a bit awkward and quickly turned his head to the lake. Kakashi-sensei, could you teach me a few water-style jutsu? You must know plenty of them, right? Such a clumsy attempt to change the topic. Kakashi chuckled, you're still too young. Let me guess, you think summoning ninja hounds isn't cool, don't you? Yorua quickly denied it. No, I think they're great. In truth, Yorua wasn't too fond of Kakashi's ninja hounds, not because he had anything against them, but because they didn't add much to his combat effectiveness. In fact, he figured he might even have to protect them during battles. Kakashi clearly didn't believe him, letting out a cold Humphrey. You can deny it all you want, but you'll understand someday. What kind of water-style jutsu do you want to learn? After thinking for a moment, Yorua said, I'd like to learn some defensive techniques. Defensive water-style jutsu, huh? Kakashi thought for a moment and said, got it. I'll teach you the water-style, water formation wall. This jutsu is a B-rank technique. Its difficulty is moderate, and for someone like you, it shouldn't be hard to pick up. Listen carefully. I'll explain the principles behind it. After Kakashi explained the technique, Yorua quickly understood it. Kakashi, however, didn't demonstrate the technique himself. Instead, he asked, if I don't show you how it's done, can you figure it out on your own? I believe with your ability, you should be able to manage, right? Kakashi was curious to see just how gifted Yorua truly was. After all, Yorua had previously managed to learn the water dragon bullet jutsu just by observing Zabuza once during their encounter. Yorua didn't decline the challenge. He nodded and walked over to the edge of the lake. Standing by the water's edge, Yorua focused his mind, channeling the chakra within him. Suddenly, he clapped his hands together and began forming seals at an incredible speed. Water style, water formation wall. As Yorua activated his chakra, the water in the lake seemed to be drawn upward, surging toward him. Rumble. The lake water rushed toward Yorua, swirling wildly around him. Whoosh. Very soon, the water encircling Yorua spun at high speed, forming a massive waterspout. The vortex of water even caused a mini storm, flattening the grass near the lake under its force. Where the water flowed across the ground, it carved trenches into the earth. Around Yorua, the waterspout stretched several meters wide, creating a formidable whirlpool. Standing in the distance, Kakashi watched this scene with a slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Is that still a water formation wall? He murmured. That looks more like a combination technique. There are clear signs of wind style mixed into it. And the scale of this technique. It's way too large. However, Kakashi wasn't entirely surprised by the power of this jutsu. Compared to the other jutsu Yorua had demonstrated in the past, this water formation wall was relatively tame. Even so, it was clearly much stronger than a standard water formation wall. Standing at the center of the swirling waters, Yorua clasped his hands together, his gaze sharp as he focused on his chakra. The water spinning wildly around him quickly came to a halt. Then, the lake water formed a massive water curtain in front of Yorua, towering over 10 meters high and spanning several dozen meters wide. Kakashi smiled. Now that's a water formation wall. What you did earlier was clearly enhanced with wind-style manipulation. This time, the gigantic water curtain that Yorua created matched the description of the water formation wall. What he had summoned earlier was clearly an offensive variant. Kakashi knew that the earlier jutsu was a result of Yorua's spontaneous creativity, blending wind style into it. For ordinary shinobi, such experimentation was highly dangerous. Randomly altering a jutsu could lead to severe consequences, including being injured by one's own technique. But Yorua had no such issues. His chakra control was already incredibly precise. Kakashi had initially been concerned about this, but after witnessing Yorua's flawless control of high-risk lightning-style techniques, he wasn't surprised anymore. Creating a water-wind combination technique? For Yorua, it was just another day of training. Chapter 54. The massive water curtain lingered in front of Yorua for over 10 seconds before he withdrew his chakra. Whoosh! Without Yorua's chakra maintaining it, the giant water curtain instantly collapsed, flooding the surrounding area and turning it into a small lake. The sheer volume of water required an enormous amount of chakra to sustain. To maintain such a large-scale water formation, one would need at least the chakra reserves of a Jonin. Impressive. Far stronger than I expected. And earlier, you added wind style into your water formation wall, didn't you? Kakashi asked as he walked over. Yorua looked at the water flowing beneath his feet and nodded. It feels like a technique like this wouldn't have much use in combat. Kakashi chuckled. It's a defensive jutsu. It's particularly useful for countering fire style. There are many shinobi in the ninja world with exceptionally powerful fire style techniques, like the third Hokage. Although the third Hokage was proficient in all 5 nature transformations, his specialties were fire style and earth style. His fire style techniques burn at temperatures far higher than those of the Uchiha clan. They're far more destructive, and ordinary water style jutsu can't even stand up to them. But I think your water formation wall from earlier could probably hold its ground. Thinking about the third Hokage's fire style, Kakashi couldn't help but admit its overwhelming strength. The third Hokage's fire style could even overcome elemental disadvantages, completely overpowering water style. This spoke volumes about how powerful his fire style techniques were. Yorua recalled the strength of the third Hokage's fire style. During the battle against the reincarnated first and second Hokage, the third's fire style could even counter the second Hokage's water style. And the second Hokage was known for his mastery of water style techniques. Yet, the third Hokage's fire style was able to evenly match the second Hokage's water style, even with the elemental disadvantage. Kakashi-sensei, is the Uchiha clan really good at fire style? Yorua asked, though he already knew the answer. Kakashi, unaware of Yorua's knowledge of the Uchiha, explained, the Uchiha clan is Hidden Lee Village's strongest ninja clan when it comes to fire style. They've created many original fire style techniques that are far more powerful than those of other shinobi. Original fire style techniques? Kakashi nodded. Yes. For example, the Great Fireball Jutsu. The Uchiha clan improved upon it and created the Grand Fireball Jutsu. They're essentially the same jutsu, but the Grand Fireball Jutsu's power far surpasses the standard Great Fireball Jutsu. I once saw Itachi Uchiha use it. Yorua froze for a moment. Itachi Uchiha. When mentioning Itachi, Kakashi's expression grew heavy as he fell into his memories. Yes, Itachi Uchiha. He was once my colleague in the Anbu. A ninja with extraordinary talent, though unfortunately, he eventually betrayed the village and his clan. Kakashi didn't know why Itachi had slaughtered his own clan. Although he was certain the truth wasn't as simple as what the village leadership had claimed, he wasn't part of the Uchiha clan and thus didn't delve deeper into the matter. He simply thought it was a shame. After all, the Uchiha clan was Obito's clan, and Itachi was a ninja he had greatly admired. If Kakashi knew that it was Obito and Itachi together who had orchestrated the Uchiha clan massacre, he might regret ever saying it was a pity. Yorua fell into thought. Yorua thought for a moment and asked, why did Itachi Uchiha spare Sasuke? At that time, Sasuke shouldn't have been capable of resisting, right? Kakashi glanced at Yorua. Because Sasuke is Itachi's younger brother. And precisely because of that, Sasuke harbors immense hatred for him. When I once asked Sasuke about his dreams, he said his dream was to personally kill Itachi Uchiha. Yorua fell silent, unsure of what to say. Sasuke's situation truly was tragic. If the Uchiha clan hadn't been annihilated, Sasuke wouldn't have turned out the way he did. Before the massacre, Sasuke had a bright and sunny personality. Though he was aloof in school, it was entirely different from now. His earlier aloofness was feigned, It came from being the top, most outstanding student in the class, a proud kind of aloofness. But after the Uchiha clan's massacre, his cold demeanor became genuine. He distanced himself from the world, focusing solely on becoming stronger to kill Itachi and avenge his clan. He hid his emotions deep within, and had no choice but to do so. In truth, Sasuke was a kind-hearted person at his core. In a way, Naruto's situation was far better than his. Naruto at least had the third Hokage watching over him. He had friends like Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba, who would even skip class with him. Having never experienced familial love, Naruto didn't even know what it felt like. So even when he was sad, it didn't break his spirit. But Sasuke once had an extremely happy family, a strict but loving father, a gentle mother, and a genius older brother whom he deeply admired. Yet in the end, it was the brother he worshipped who slaughtered their clan, sparing no one, not even their parents. Before leaving, Itachi even replayed the massacre in front of Sasuke. The anguish of that experience forced Sasuke to seek strength. Yoru could see that Sasuke had feelings for Sakura. During a prior attack, Sasuke had instinctively shielded Sakura. And that was Sasuke's first actual combat experience. Combat is a completely different realm compared to regular training. Yet he didn't hesitate, he stepped in front of Sakura without a second thought. That alone proved that, despite his usual lack of overt displays of emotion toward her, Sasuke undoubtedly cared for Sakura. Yoru could understand Sasuke's pain. He couldn't even imagine how he'd cope if he went through what Sasuke did. He'd probably turn out even more extreme than Sasuke. When Yoru first arrived in this world, he thought it would be exciting to grow alongside Naruto. After all, in his previous life, Yoru had been moved by Naruto's fiery passion. But after living in this world for 6 years alongside Naruto, Yoru found himself far less impressed. Initially, Yoru admired Naruto for not succumbing to darkness despite the harsh environment he faced early on. But after spending years here and witnessing Naruto's life firsthand, Yoru couldn't relate to him at all. In his past life, Yoru had seen many people in situations similar to Naruto's. Some had even harsher circumstances than Naruto's, considering he always had the third Hokage looking after him. Naruto, as a Jinchuriki, had surprising freedom within the village. He could pull off huge pranks, like defacing the Hokage rock with graffiti. At first, Yoru admired Naruto for not giving in to the darkness. But after being his classmate for 6 years, Yoru realized, why wouldn't Naruto remain unaffected? He had friends, wasn't short on money, often skipped class, and still hadn't been expelled despite consistently scoring 0 on exams. That kind of treatment was practically like being Hidden Leaf Village's prince. Why would he have any reason to fall into despair? There were plenty of children in Hidden Leaf Village without parents or families. Hidden Leaf Village was full of war orphans, many of whom were in far worse situations than Naruto. Some had even lost their families to the Nine Tails during the attack. Chapter 55. Moreover, many people don't even qualify to enter the Ninja Academy. The academy only admits 30 students each year, so you can imagine how many don't make the cut. But Naruto got in. Not only did he get in, but with grades like his, he still wasn't expelled. Yoru thought to himself, if it were me, not only would I not darken, I'd be thrilled to death. Sasuke, on the other hand, witnessed Itachi Uchiha slaughter his parents with his own eyes. Itachi even replayed how he butchered the Uchiha clan members one by one with a blade. The fear, despair, and confusion on the faces of those clan members as they died, all of it was enough to shatter the 6-year-old Sasuke countless times. Naruto didn't witness his parents being killed by the Nine Tails firsthand. But Sasuke saw Itachi personally cut down those clan members who had cared for him. If Yoru had experienced that blood-soaked night, he probably would have spiraled into extremity long ago. Kindness? After enduring such a thing, Yoru felt that as long as he could gain the power to kill Itachi, it wouldn't matter how many people died in the process. Experiencing something like that makes rationality impossible. At least Yoru knew that he wouldn't be able to maintain his composure or keep a shred of kindness in his heart. But Sasuke did. He deeply loved his family and clan. That's why he desperately sought power, even risking having his body taken over by Orochimaru. Yet even while following Orochimaru, Sasuke never killed indiscriminately. He never slaughtered innocent people, even unrelated ninja. The most remarkable thing was that, despite being trained by Orochimaru, Sasuke maintained such moral restraint. It showed how inherently kind his heart was. What Sasuke lacked was a mature guide in his life. While Kakashi's perspective was mature, he wasn't strong enough to guide Sasuke fully. Before coming to this world, Yoru greatly admired Naruto. After arriving, however, he admired Sasuke the most. Of course, Yoru didn't want to meddle in other people's business. Admiring Sasuke didn't mean he wanted to alter the course of Sasuke's life. Life only has meaning when one experiences it themselves. Lessons learned through personal understanding are the ones that stick forever. Kakashi, noticing Yorui's contemplative expression, patted his shoulder. Now you understand why Sasuke is the way he is, right? But I still hope you can change him. Yorua froze, looking up at Kakashi in confusion. Me? Kakashi nodded. That's right. Back then, when I was at my lowest, it was my comrades who pulled me out. I hope you can do the same. Besides, you're strong enough. Sasuke is a proud person, words from you will carry far more weight than from Naruto. Yorua, however, shook his head. I'd be willing to try, but I don't think interfering in Sasuke's choices is a good idea. Especially for someone his age. The more you interfere, the more rebellious he'll become. At best, you can guide him. Too much interference will only push him in the opposite direction. Kakashi sighed. Do you think I don't know that? I just don't want to see him go down the wrong path. In his pursuit of power, he might break many of the village's rules. Yorua didn't respond. Sasuke would indeed defect from Hidden Leaf Village in the future. Yorua just hadn't expected Kakashi to have such foresight. It seemed Kakashi truly understood Sasuke well. Compared to Naruto, Kakashi indeed paid more attention to Sasuke. Yorua could understand that, after all, Kakashi's combat style and ninjutsu techniques were more suited to Sasuke. Adding to that was the influence of Obito Uchiha, which made it natural for Kakashi to focus more on Sasuke. Besides, Kakashi couldn't teach Naruto much anyway. In a little while, during the Chunin exams, Jiraiya would return to the village. Yorua didn't believe for a second that Jiraiya's return was mere coincidence. There was no way Jiraiya decided to personally train Naruto just because of a few casual words. If another ninja went to Jiraiya and asked to learn ninjutsu from him, Jiraiya would most likely tell them to get lost. So, Jiraiya's return during the Chunin exams was clearly because he knew Naruto had graduated from the Ninja Academy and wanted to personally train him. Would Kakashi even dare to say no to letting Naruto go? Looking at Kakashi's worried expression, Yorua smiled and said, Kakashi-sensei, you're overthinking things. With Sasuke's personality, even if he does something that violates Hidden Leaf Village's rules in the future, it won't be anything truly heinous. He's a pretty normal person at heart. Kakashi sighed helplessly, I hope you're right. Speaking of Sasuke, I need to teach you how to deal with the Sharingan. The Sharingan's most important abilities, aside from copying ninjutsu, include casting genjutsu. This is critical. No matter how strong your ninjutsu skills are, if you don't know how to counter genjutsu, it's easy to suffer a setback. Yorua nodded, agreeing with Kakashi's assessment. You're absolutely right, but genjutsu is really hard to defend against, especially when it's Sharingan-based. Sharingan genjutsu was fundamentally different from regular genjutsu. Yorua vividly remembered how Kurenai Yui, a genjutsu master, was instantly countered by Itachi Uchiha. Even though Kurenai had performed poorly against Itachi, among the Jonin, she was one of the strongest in genjutsu. After all, she became a Jonin because of her mastery of genjutsu. Not just a special Jonin, either, she was a full-fledged Jonin, on the same level as Kakashi, Asuma, and Guy. Her strength couldn't have been weak, especially given that genjutsu was her primary fighting style. But even as a genjutsu expert, she was utterly defeated by Itachi in an instant. That fight not only showcased Itachi's mastery of genjutsu but also demonstrated the sheer overpowered nature of the Sharingan. It wasn't just Itachi, throughout the ninja world, the Sharingan was a feared tool. It was so troublesome that many villages had to develop specific strategies to counter it. This alone showed how wary the ninja world was of the Sharingan and how powerful it truly was. Yorua had an enormous amount of chakra and had already mastered 3 S-rank ninjutsu of destructive power. In a straightforward clash of strength, Yorua wasn't afraid of most Jonin. But the Sharingan could nullify all of his combat strength with just one look. Just a single glance. No matter how strong a jutsu's power was, it wouldn't matter if you couldn't execute it or hit the target. Kakashi said, actually, there are ways to deal with the Sharingan. Over the years, the ninja world has come up with many methods. Though most of them aren't very effective. But you have a natural advantage, your sensory abilities are exceptionally strong. Yorua froze for a moment. Are you suggesting I close my eyes when facing the Sharingan and rely on my sensory abilities to fight? Kakashi nodded. Exactly. For other ninjas, this would be difficult to manage. But I know how strong your sensory abilities are, strong enough to replace your vision entirely. And at a level that matches the dynamic visual perception of the Sharingan. As evidenced when you use Chidori, you can move at such high speeds and still strike your target with precision. That's a skill only you have, something even I can't achieve. Chapter 56. Yorua thought about it. His sensory abilities had indeed become extraordinarily strong. However, he was already so accustomed to them that he didn't consider it a particularly special skill. Relying on sensory abilities for combat feels a bit unfamiliar, he admitted. Although Yorua's sensory capabilities were powerful, he had never truly relied on them as his primary means of fighting. The only exception was when he used Chidori, where sensory abilities served as a supplementary tool. Moreover, after mastering techniques like Chidori Sharp Spear and Chidori Senbon, Chidori itself had become less of a primary offensive technique for him. After all, Chidori required close combat, which wasn't efficient and left openings for counterattacks. Kakashi said, "Then practice. Your sensory abilities are exceptional, and it would be a waste not to make full use of them." Thinking about the possibility of facing Mangekyo Sharingan, or even the Rinnegan in the future, Yorua decided it was worth training. After all, the Sharingan was one of the most significant Kekkei Genkai in this world. The Fourth Great Ninja War was essentially started by a few individuals wielding the Sharingan, the Rinnegan, and the Rin Sharingan. Since Yorua didn't possess a Sharingan, it was impossible for him to take the path of I-based power. The path available to him was similar to Naruto's, relying on immense chakra reserves and ninjutsu to face the challenges of the Fourth Great Ninja War. Even though he didn't have the power of the Six Paths, Yorua believed that when the Fourth Great Ninja War came, he wouldn't necessarily be weaker than Naruto. He trusted the system's abilities. Yorua nodded and said, "I will, Kakashi-sensei. Please keep teaching me more elemental ninjutsu." Seeing that Yorua had taken his advice seriously, Kakashi was pleased. That was one thing Yorua excelled at. He didn't have Naruto's impulsiveness or Sasuke's stubbornness. Yorua's personality was very grounded, with none of the quirks or unusual ideas that made things complicated. The two of them trained by the lake for several hours, only stopping when night fell. In those few hours, Kakashi had nearly exhausted all of his chakra. Some of the ninjutsu required him to demonstrate for Yorua. But Yorua learned it incredibly quickly. For each technique, Kakashi needed only to explain the theory and demonstrate it once, then Yorua would master it. In just a few hours, Yorua had learned over 10 A rank and B rank elemental ninjutsu. Fortunately, not every technique required Kakashi to demonstrate. Otherwise, even if Kakashi drained himself completely, it would have been impossible for him to provide enough chakra to perform over 10 E rank and B rank ninjutsu within such a short time. While Kakashi's chakra was nearly depleted, Yorua hadn't even used up a third of his. On the way back, Kakashi glanced at Yorua, who showed no signs of fatigue, and couldn't help but feel exasperated. "Are you not tired at all?" Yorua chuckled. "Not at all. But you just performed over 10 E rank and B rank ninjutsu. That must have consumed a lot of chakra, right?" Kakashi guessed. Yorua shook his head. "Not really. I didn't use up much chakra, and it replenishes pretty quickly." This was one of Yorua's strengths, his rapid chakra recovery. His chakra wasn't just drawn from within his own body, it was also replenished by absorbing natural energy from his surroundings. Although natural energy wasn't infinite, it easily provided Yorua with enough chakra to sustain Kage-level usage without any strain. It was clear. After the Fourth Great Ninja War, Naruto could extract natural energy sufficient to counter Sasuke, who had drawn chakra from eight-tailed beasts. Compared to that, Yorua's chakra reserves were practically insignificant. Moreover, natural energy was a renewable resource. As long as the energy of this planet wasn't completely depleted, natural energy would continue to regenerate endlessly. The reason Yorua's chakra was at the Kage level wasn't that he could only absorb that much, it was because his body could currently only handle that amount of chakra anymore, and his body wouldn't be able to withstand it. After all, Yorua didn't initially have a special physique. It was only after obtaining the system that his body began to gradually strengthen. Now, his chakra reserves were already comparable to Naruto's, which was impressive enough. However, due to the nature of his chakra being derived from natural energy, Yorua consumed far less chakra for the same jutsu compared to ordinary ninja. Kakashi, unaware of Yorua's unique ability, was intrigued. "Your chakra replenishes that quickly?" "Yeah. Earlier, when I used 3 lightning-style jutsu, my chakra was nearly depleted, but it recovered before long," Yorua explained. Kakashi was skeptical and immediately activated his Sharingan. To his surprise, he saw that Yorua's chakra had already recovered to 80%. Kakashi's expression twitched. "You just performed over 10 large-scale jutsu, and your chakra barely looks used up?" Yorua smiled. "I don't know why, but my chakra recovers really fast." Kakashi shook his head in exasperation. "It's infuriating to compare myself to you. Not only do you have more chakra than me, but your recovery rate is faster. And your jutsu are stronger than mine. Who's the teacher here, anyway?" Yorua looked at Kakashi and said seriously, If students can't surpass their teacher in the end, what's the point of being a student? Kakashi paused for a moment, staring at Yorua's earnest expression. Then he smiled knowingly. You're right. If my students can't surpass me, then I've failed as a teacher. But not everyone can surpass me. Kakashi added, a hint of pride in his tone. It wasn't arrogance, Kakashi was naturally a genius. Had he not gone through a period of stagnation, his strength would have been even greater than it was now. Of course, no matter how much stronger he became, the limit was still the Kage level. And how many Kage level shinobi were there in the ninja world? Forget Kage level, most ninja couldn't even reach the rank of elite Jonin in their lifetime. For the vast majority of ninja, reaching Chunin was already the pinnacle of their career. But Yorua was different. In Kakashi's eyes, Yorua's talent far surpassed his own. Kakashi even believed that Yorua's only shortcoming was a lack of combat experience. Once he gained more real-world experience, his strength would undoubtedly surpass Kakashi's. Still, Kakashi felt nothing but pride. Yorua understood that Kakashi wasn't being arrogant and nodded. Of course. Kakashi-sensei, your strength is truly remarkable. There are very few ninja in the world who could reach your level of power. Yorua added a small compliment. Kakashi wasn't someone who cared about flattery, but hearing it from his own student made it all the more meaningful. Let's go check on Naruto and Sasuke's training progress, Kakashi suggested. Yorua chuckled. Those two have incredible potential. Both have immense power within them. Kakashi nodded in agreement. That's true. While Sakura is far superior in chakra control, her chakra reserves are relatively limited. Naruto and Sasuke, on the other hand, have vast stores of chakra. As long as they can learn to harness their chakra properly, their strength will grow rapidly. Kakashi already knew how to guide the two of them. Unfortunately, in the end, one would follow Jiraiya, and the other, Orochimaru. Chapter 57. Kakashi already had his own teaching methods for the two, but the unexpected arrival of Jiraiya and Sasuke's unrelenting thirst for power disrupted his plans. The two of them made their way to where Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura were training. Although it was already dark, they could still see Sasuke and Naruto standing on the treetops, panting heavily. Sakura was standing on the ground, watching the two of them. When Yorua and Kakashi arrived, Sakura approached them, especially taking a moment to look Yorua up and down. Curiously, she asked, Yorua, did you actually train? You don't look like it. Oh? And how did you figure that out? Yorua replied. Sakura circled around him once and said, your clothes don't even have a single wrinkle. How could you have been training? Don't tell me you and Kakashi-sensei slacked off all afternoon. That's not acceptable. Even though you're strong, if you don't put in effort, you'll stagnate and eventually be surpassed by Sasuke, or even Naruto. Yorua smiled but didn't say anything. Kakashi interrupted Sakura and asked, how are they doing? He was asking about Sasuke and Naruto. Sakura beamed. They've both mastered it. Even Naruto has been working really hard at training. As she spoke, she glanced at Yorua, clearly saying it for his benefit. She wasn't hostile toward Yorua, in fact, she was concerned that he might slack off and let his skills deteriorate. Yorua understood her intentions but chose not to comment. There was no need to. Kakashi looked up at the treetops, where Sasuke and Naruto stood, still panting as they stared each other down. The two were obviously competing. That was quick. Sasuke I can understand, but Naruto mastering it this fast is surprising, Kakashi remarked. Sakura looked at Kakashi curiously and asked, Kakashi-sensei, you didn't slack off earlier, did you? Though Sakura suspected Yorua might slack off, she wasn't entirely sure. Kakashi replied calmly, do you think he'd let me? Even if I wanted to rest, he wouldn't let me. Sakura glanced at Yorua, puzzled. But why doesn't Yorua look like he's been training at all? Kakashi also turned to Yorua, finally noticing the same thing. Even Kakashi's clothes had a few tears in them. Kakashi sighed helplessly. That's true. He doesn't show a single trace of training. This is what we call a difference in level. Kakashi muttered to himself, saying things that Sakura couldn't comprehend. She looked at Kakashi and Yorua with a bewildered expression. Being able to control chakra with such precision. It's even better than mine, Kakashi said with a smile at Yorua. Yorua didn't respond, offering only a faint smile. Sakura leaned closer to Yorua and whispered, what's Kakashi-sensei talking about? Yorua replied, he's just saying his usual cryptic things, nothing to worry about. Sakura glanced between Yorua and Kakashi, suspecting they were hiding something from her. Since neither of them would elaborate, Sakura decided not to dwell on it further. She sidled up to Yorua and asked, Yorua, where were you two training earlier? There were several tremors a while ago, I almost thought Zabuza was attacking us again. If the commotion hadn't been so big, I would have sworn it was him. Yoru was stunned. An earthquake? Yoru asked. Sakura nodded. Yes, the tremors were quite strong. The place where Yoru and Kakashi were training was far from where Sakura was, with a forest separating them. She had no idea that the earthquake had actually been caused by Yoru. Yoru glanced at Kakashi, then replied, maybe this area is on a seismic fault line. After all, earthquakes are pretty common in a place like the Land of Waves. Sakura didn't question it further and accepted Yoru's explanation. The so-called earthquakes Sakura mentioned were actually caused by Yoru's initial use of Chidori and several Earth-style jutsu later. Though Earth-style techniques are primarily defensive, they do create significant disturbances when activated. They also consume a large amount of chakra, which explained why Kakashi's chakra had been so heavily depleted. Meanwhile, Sasuke and Naruto, standing on the treetops, noticed the arrival of Kakashi and Yoru. They prepared to descend but forgot that their chakra was already nearly exhausted. As they attempted to walk down, both quickly realized they were out of chakra. Sasuke! Naruto! Sakura shouted in alarm as she saw them lose their balance and fall from the treetops. Kakashi exchanged a glance with Yoru, who nodded in response. Just as Sasuke and Naruto felt their minds go blank and nearly lost consciousness, Kakashi and Yoru vanished from their spots. In the next moment, Yoru appeared beside Naruto, and Kakashi appeared beside Sasuke. Both grabbed the falling pair around their waists. In an instant, Kakashi descended to the ground in a flash of blue lightning, while Yoru landed in a streak of golden lightning. After placing Sasuke and Naruto on the ground, Kakashi smiled and remarked, "Your speed's faster than mine now." Naruto and Sasuke, who had just been set down, finally came to their senses. Realizing they had been saved by Kakashi and Yoru, the two exchanged a glance, both feeling humiliated. They had originally planned to show off the results of their afternoon training in front of Yoru and Kakashi. Instead, they had messed up. Naruto stared at Yoru. A moment ago, all he'd seen was a flash before he found himself on the ground. For the first time, Naruto experienced Yoru's overwhelming power firsthand. Even Sasuke was visibly shaken as he looked at Yoru. When he had seen Yoru appear beside Naruto, the golden lightning had been so fast that it left only after images. Sasuke had never seen Yoru in such a state before. Sasuke had always known he wasn't a match for Yoru yet, but now he realized the gap between them was like a vast chasm, an insurmountable difference. Sakura was stunned too. She could understand Kakashi's speed, he was an elite Jonin, after all. But Yoru turning into a golden streak of lightning, even faster than Kakashi, was something she hadn't expected. The speed was so incredible she could only catch the after image. Sakura murmured to herself, was he training in that jutsu with Kakashi-sensei just now? That had to be a lightning-style technique. He's never shown anything like that before. I can't believe I said he wasn't training earlier. How could someone like him ever slack off? Sakura, you're so stupid. If he were lazy, he wouldn't be so much stronger than us. She felt ridiculous for doubting Yoru earlier. Thinking back to how Yoru had merely smiled at her suspicions, Sakura now felt like a fool. The more she thought about it, the more embarrassed she became. For a moment, Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura all fell silent. Neither Yoru nor Kakashi noticed the trio's reactions. Kakashi looked at Sasuke and Naruto and said, "You both depleted too much chakra. That move you just tried was far too dangerous." Chapter 58 Kakashi's reproach made Sasuke and Naruto lower their heads in shame. Originally, both of them wanted to show off to Kakashi and Yoru. But things had backfired. They even ended up embarrassing themselves in front of Yoru. However, Naruto quickly stood up, pointing at Yoru. "Kakashi-sensei, did you teach Yoru some amazing jutsu just now? The technique he used to save me, I've never seen it before." Sasuke also stood up, though he simply dusted himself off, keeping his attention fixed on Yoru. He wanted to understand what had happened. More importantly, he wanted to know if Kakashi indeed had some powerful jutsu, and whether he could learn it in the future. Naruto, however, was on a different wavelength. He simply felt that Kakashi was being unfair. "I'm his student. How could he teach Yoru and not me?" Seeing Naruto's frustrated expression, Kakashi said, "You two haven't even mastered chakra control yet. How can I teach you any jutsu? Once you've laid a solid foundation, I'll naturally teach you techniques." Hearing this, Sasuke nodded silently to himself. "So, it seems the technique Yoru used was taught by Kakashi." Naruto, not thinking too deeply, boasted instead, "I've already mastered chakra control, Kakashi-sensei. You can start teaching me jutsu tomorrow." Kakashi shook his head. "You still have a lot to learn. You're far from ready." "Then why does Yoru get to learn? We're supposed to be your students." Naruto's dissatisfaction was clear. Kakashi frowned slightly. I've already told you, your fundamentals are still lacking. There's much more you need to grasp. And for the record, Yorua is also my student. In fact, Kakashi almost wanted to add that Yorua was his most important student. If it weren't for Sasuke and Naruto's special significance to the Hidden Leaf Village, Kakashi likely wouldn't have taken them on at all. Sensing the seriousness in Kakashi's tone, even Naruto chose to hold his tongue. Still, his face was filled with envy and resentment as he looked at Yorua. Although Naruto wouldn't blame Yorua because of Kakashi's words, he was undeniably jealous. After all, Yorua wasn't originally part of their team, it was Kakashi who insisted on bringing him along for missions. In Naruto's eyes, Kakashi's actions undeniably favored Yorua. Naruto, being emotionally sensitive, was even more attuned to this kind of thing. He couldn't help but feel that Kakashi treated him differently because he was the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. What Naruto overlooked was that both Sasuke and Sakura were treated the same way. The difference was that neither of them felt Kakashi was playing favorites. Both of them understood just how strong Yorua was. From the battle against Zabuza alone, it was clear. Yorua's strength far surpassed theirs. Both Sasuke and Sakura knew that for someone their age to be so much stronger, it could only mean one of two things: either Yorua worked far harder than they did, or his natural talent was far superior. Sasuke believed that Yorua must be more diligent than him. He would never admit that Yorua's talent exceeded his own. Sakura, on the other hand, felt that Yorua was both exceptionally talented and hardworking. Naruto simply believed that Kakashi was playing favorites. After all, Kakashi was one of the few high-ranking shinobi who didn't reject him outright. Naruto still considered Kakashi his teacher, which made him hold high expectations for him. What Naruto cared about most was Kakashi's feelings toward him, not so much his strength. When Yorua heard Kakashi sternly say what he did, he felt a headache coming on. He knew Kakashi was just trying to protect him. But such words would only make Naruto feel that Kakashi was even more biased, possibly even resent Yorua for it. Though helpless, Yorua didn't want to say anything. At times like this, silence was the best course of action. The more he spoke, the more agitated Naruto would become. After all, Naruto was already emotionally sensitive. When no one else spoke, Kakashi finally said, "Alright, you've all trained hard enough today. Go back and rest." With that, Kakashi disappeared without a trace. Looking at the now empty spot where Kakashi had stood, Yorua's lips twitched slightly. He thought to himself, handle the kill but leave the mess. You're really leaving this for me to deal with? Yorua was speechless. It was obvious that Kakashi had noticed the awkward atmosphere among the group. He left Yorua behind, likely wanting him to spend time alone with Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura to build rapport. But in the current situation, Yorua had no desire to stay here at all. Truly irresponsible. Yorua muttered inwardly as he grumbled about Kakashi. He finally turned to the three and said, "Let's head back too." Though he wanted to use the body flicker jutsu to leave, doing so would likely make Sasuke and Naruto feel even more unbalanced. Sakura, sensing the tense mood, quickly chimed in, "Yes, let's go. It's been a tiring day." Among the team, Sakura had no issues with Yorua. At this moment, both Sasuke and Naruto saw Yorua as a target to surpass. Naruto, in particular, was determined to become stronger, defeat Yorua, and prove to Kakashi that he was his most outstanding student, deserving of Kakashi's recognition. Due to his age, Naruto believed Kakashi favored Yorua simply because Yorua was stronger than him. Naruto thought that once he surpassed Yorua, Kakashi would acknowledge him. It was a simple and earnest mindset, one that was quite typical for boys of his age. As the group walked through the forest, no one spoke. The atmosphere was calm, with only the occasional sounds of birds and beasts breaking the silence. After some time, Sakura, feeling the tension, decided to break the ice. Sasuke and Naruto were very focused this afternoon. They managed to master chakra control in just one afternoon. "Yorua, what jutsu did you and Kakashi-sensei practice this afternoon? It must have been some incredible technique, right?" Though Sasuke and Naruto didn't say anything, they perked up their ears at Sakura's words. Yorua casually replied, "Just a few water-style techniques." "Powerful ones?" Sakura asked curiously. Yorua glanced at the two who were pretending not to care but were clearly listening intently. With a calm tone, he said, "How strong can water-style techniques really be?" Hearing this, Sakura's lips twitched slightly. "Water-style techniques aren't strong? The one you used that day against Zabuza was really powerful. If Zabuza hadn't dodged it, he would have been done for. It didn't even hit him. Zabuza is an elite Jonin, just like Kakashi-sensei. Do you think someone like that would be easy to defeat? You only saw that he almost got hit. In reality, defeating him was still a long way off." If elite Jonin were that easy to beat, villages wouldn't only have a handful of them. Some villages don't even have more than 10. Yorua's words were honest. Elite Jonin were strategic assets for a village, capable of competing for the position of village leader. The shadow of a village was always chosen from among the elite Jonin. However, it was clear Sakura and the others didn't fully understand his point. But you almost won that day. Zabuza ran away because he was afraid of you. Sakura insisted. Chapter 59. Yorua chuckled and said, that's because Zabuza thought facing Kakashi-sensei and me together wouldn't end well for him. If it were just me, there's no way he'd have run. Sakura nodded in half understanding. Sasuke, on the other hand, didn't feel much about the situation. After all, he himself had already mastered a few fire-style techniques, all learned from the Uchiha clan's jutsu archives. Sasuke didn't believe Yorua's water-style techniques were significantly stronger than fire-style techniques. In Sasuke's opinion, whether it was water-style, fire-style, or earth-style, none were decisive jutsu. Naruto, however, was quite displeased. At the moment, aside from the Shadow Clone Jutsu, he didn't know any other techniques. The Shadow Clone Jutsu wasn't even something Kakashi taught him, he'd learned it by stealing the Scroll of Seals before graduation. Right now, Naruto hadn't mastered a single combat jutsu. So he pouted unhappily and muttered, Kakashi-sensei really is biased. It's like we're not even his students. Yorua glanced at Naruto and could somewhat understand him. After all, at the end of the day, Naruto was just a 12-year-old kid. Jealousy and competitiveness were especially pronounced at that age. Kakashi-sensei actually wants you to build a solid foundation before learning jutsu. Yorua said gently. He's your Jonin instructor. Since you passed his test, he truly sees you as his students. As a teacher, he certainly doesn't want you to become overly impatient. Why don't you ask Sasuke how he learned jutsu back then? Didn't he have to master a lot of basics first? Sasuke froze for a moment. He hadn't expected Yorua to bring him into this. Naruto looked up at Sasuke. Sasuke didn't really want to say anything, but since Yorua brought it up, he reluctantly obliged. Although Sasuke saw Yorua as someone to surpass, for now, Yorua was far stronger than him. So Sasuke listened to Yorua on some matters. Sasuke nodded slightly. You do need to master a lot of fundamental knowledge. Even with the explanation, Sasuke kept it brief. Naturally, Naruto didn't take it to heart. Fundamentals? I learned the Shadow Clone Jutsu in just one night. Naruto retorted. Yorua smiled. That's because the Shadow Clone Jutsu is uniquely suited to you. Or you could say it's practically tailor-made for you. Back at the academy, you couldn't even master the Clone Jutsu. After 6 years, you still couldn't do it. How did you suddenly learn the Shadow Clone Jutsu in just one night? Do you even know why the Shadow Clone Jutsu, or rather, the multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu you learned, is classified as a forbidden jutsu? Naruto looked completely clueless. Back then, he had just learned the first technique he saw in the scroll without considering whether it was forbidden or not. Let alone understanding the restrictions of the technique. Sakura and Sasuke also turned their eyes to Yorua. Sasuke, in particular, was curious about how Naruto had suddenly mastered the Shadow Clone Jutsu. After all, Naruto couldn't even manage the Clone Jutsu before. The Shadow Clone Jutsu was far more advanced than the basic Clone Jutsu. Yorua explained, that's because the Shadow Clone Jutsu evenly distributes the user's chakra among the clones. And when the technique is released, any physical or chakra depletion experienced by the clones is returned to the original body. For ninja with low chakra reserves or poor stamina, using the Shadow Clone Jutsu is extremely dangerous, even more so with multiple Shadow Clones. Not to mention the multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu. Yorua continued. You are the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails. With an immense chakra reserve and a strong physique enhanced by the Nine Tails, you're able to withstand the drawbacks of the multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu. However, when it comes to learning other elemental jutsu, attempting them without mastering the basics could easily lead to injuries. The backlash from a failed jutsu attempt can be deadly, especially with your lack of theoretical knowledge. Why do some people take a long time to learn a single jutsu, while others master it in just a few days? Beyond differences in talent, the key factor is their foundational knowledge. Think about your 6 years at the academy. What exactly did you learn? Do you think your foundation is solid? Sakura giggled. Solid? He didn't learn a thing. He got zeros on every exam. I don't even know how he managed that. Even a little studying would have helped. Sasuke glanced at Naruto, thinking, so, the reason he mastered the Shadow Clone Jutsu is because of the Nine Tails. However, Sasuke didn't know much about the Nine Tails. When the Nine Tails attacked the village, Sasuke was just a newborn. And after the Uchiha massacre, there was no one left to tell him about it. Naruto rubbed his stomach, his expression darkening. He believed Yorua's explanation. When he was younger, Naruto had experienced a brief rampage once. That incident had been quickly suppressed, leaving no significant impact on the village. As a result, not many people in the village knew about it. But Naruto remembered. That power, while malevolent, was undeniably immense. Naruto looked at Yorua and asked, "Why was the Nine Tails sealed inside me? If it weren't for the Nine Tails, the people in the village wouldn't treat me like this." As the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, Naruto had been ostracized from a young age. While his situation wasn't as harsh as Killer Bee's, being an orphan had made him emotionally vulnerable. Even though no one tried to assassinate him or threw things at him, the mere act of being shunned was enough to make Naruto feel deeply hurt. At his age, he couldn't understand why the villagers treated him that way. He could only blame it all on the Nine Tails inside him and the villagers' apparent dislike of him. Yorua placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and explained, "The Nine Tails is Hidden Leaf Village's strategic weapon. In other words, you are extremely important to the village." Naruto slapped Yorua's hand away and angrily retorted, "But I don't want it. If I'm so important, then why does everyone in the village treat me like this? You don't know what I've been through all these years. The villagers all see me as a monster. No one likes me, no one acknowledges me." Perhaps Yorua's words had triggered Naruto's emotions, causing him to pour out all the grievances he'd bottled up over the years. He even started crying. Sakura and Sasuke both looked at Naruto. For the first time, they began to understand the weight Naruto had been carrying. Even Sakura, who often teased Naruto, now looked at him with sympathy. Sasuke, meanwhile, felt a sense of empathy. Although he had never been ostracized by the villagers, quite the opposite, as his Uchiha lineage made him popular in Hidden Leaf Village, his entire clan had been massacred. Watching his parents die at the hands of his most admired brother had inflicted a pain far greater than Naruto's experiences. At that moment, Sasuke and Naruto shared a similar pain. Sakura spoke softly, "Naruto, it's not true that you don't have friends. Iruka-sensei, Shikamaru, Choji, and Kiba, they're all your friends, aren't they? I used to see you playing with Shikamaru and the others and thought you were just annoying. I had no idea you'd been through so much." Chapter 60. Sakura's words left Naruto momentarily stunned. As he reflected, he realized she was right, he did have many friends. Maybe his situation wasn't as bad as he thought. Perhaps he had been too fixated on the negative. Sure, the villagers shunned him, but as long as his friends didn't, wasn't that enough? Seeing Naruto calm down, Yorua spoke again, "Have you ever considered that maybe the villagers don't dislike you because you're the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, but because you're always pulling pranks and causing chaos? They're probably just annoyed with you, which makes them avoid you." Naruto froze, his mind processing Yorua's suggestion. The idea wasn't without merit. While the villagers might fear him due to his status as the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, the actual dislike could stem from his own actions. Naruto believed that his pranks would draw attention and make people acknowledge him, but his antics likely reinforced their negative perceptions, making the villagers more convinced that he, as the Nine Tails Jinchuriki, was inherently troublesome or even evil. This dynamic became evident during the Chunin exams. When Naruto demonstrated his abilities and refrained from mischief, the villagers could accept and even acknowledge him. Unlike other ninja villages where Jinchuriki might be hated or even assassinated, Hidden Leaf Village's attitude was relatively mild. Hidden Leaf Village's Jinchuriki rarely faced attacks from their own people. The first Hokage's wife, the village's initial Jinchuriki, lived a secluded life. The second Jinchuriki, Kushina Uzumaki, had a tougher time than Naruto. Before marrying Minato, she was constantly monitored by the Anbu, surrounded by defensive barriers. Yet even she was never targeted by Hidden Leaf Village's ninjas. Compared to Kushina, Naruto's life was far freer. He never faced restrictions like being confined within barriers. From childhood, he had full freedom in the village, even when defacing the Hokage rock, his punishment was merely to clean it up. This leniency was clearly the third Hokage shielding him. The Hokage rock represented Hidden Leaf Village's successive Hokage, a memorial sculpture of immense symbolic importance. Naruto's act of vandalizing it was akin to disrespecting revered ancestors, yet his punishment was minimal. If anyone else had done it, they would face far harsher consequences, possibly imprisonment or worse. From Yorua's perspective, the villagers' rejection of Naruto largely stemmed from his extreme methods of seeking attention. These actions only deepened their preconceived notions of him. Naruto didn't know how to respond. "Think about it," Yorua said. "The villagers fear you might lose control because of the Nine Tails. Isn't it natural for them to keep their distance? But if you stopped being so disruptive and pulling pranks, wouldn't they start seeing you differently? Take Shikamaru, Iruka-sensei, Sakura, and Sasuke. Don't you think they know you're the Nine Tails Jinchuriki? Why do they accept you? It's because they've spent time with you and realized you wouldn't harm anyone. But the villagers haven't had that same opportunity to get to know you, so naturally, their perception remains unchanged. The impression you leave in that instant becomes their entire perception of you. Yoru said. And everything you do in that moment only deepens the image they already have of you in their minds. It's normal for them to keep their distance. Honestly, I think the villagers are kind and simple folk for not resorting to hitting or cursing you. Hearing this, Naruto fell silent. Yoru continued, so, if you can gain control over the Nine Tails within you and turn its power into a force that protects the village, who would still reject you? Naruto was stunned. Control the Nine Tails inside me? But that's the nine-tailed fox. How could a human possibly control something like that? It's such an evil creature. I don't even want anything to do with it. Yoru was speechless for a moment. This was the Nine Tails they were talking about, the strongest of the nine-tailed beasts. And yet, Naruto was so dismissive of it. Do you have any idea how powerful the nine-tailed fox inside you really is? Naruto nodded. I know. His expression grew complicated as he added, I remember once, when I was a kid, the Nine Tails power broke out. Even now, I can still recall how overwhelmingly evil and strong that power felt. Yoru was surprised that Naruto could still remember the feeling after losing control. Tailed beasts are strategic weapons for every ninja village, and Jinchuriki are critical assets. Yoru explained. But there's always a risk of the Jinchuriki losing their consciousness to the beast, so villagers naturally worry about that and keep their distance. The Jinchuriki in other villages don't have it any easier. You, being able to move about freely, are already far better off than most. In some villages, Jinchuriki have even been assassinated by their fellow ninjas. When a Jinchuriki loses control and causes destruction, people tend to blame the Jinchuriki rather than the tailed beast. So it's not surprising they're unwelcome. You know that the fourth Hokage sacrificed himself to seal the Nine Tails and save the village, right? Naruto nodded, his face full of respect. The fourth Hokage has always been my hero. I want to become a hero like him someday. Yoru smiled. If that's the case, don't you think the fourth Hokage had hopes for you when he sealed the Nine Tails inside you? Maybe he wanted you to one day control the Nine Tails power. By mastering it, you become incredibly strong, strong enough to protect the village and be a hero, just like him. Naruto stared at Yoru in disbelief. Really? Is that what the fourth Hokage wanted? This was the first time Naruto had ever heard about a connection between himself and the fourth Hokage. He felt a surge of joy, as he had always idolized the fourth Hokage. Yoru nodded. Why else do you think the sealing technique he used allows the Nine Tails chakra to merge with yours? Have you ever wondered why your chakra reserves are so much larger than others? Compared to your peers, your chakra is immense, far greater than Sasuke's. At the mention of his name, Sasuke, who had been listening intently, froze for a moment. He turned to Naruto with a puzzled look. Sasuke hadn't realized Naruto's chakra reserves surpassed his own. Naruto, equally surprised, exclaimed, Really? My chakra is really greater than Sasuke's? He was ecstatic. Having always viewed Sasuke as his rival, learning that he surpassed him in any way was a huge confidence boost. Chapter 61 Sakura was equally curious, though she looked skeptical. You're kidding, right? Naruto having more chakra than Sasuke? In Sakura's eyes, Sasuke was incredibly strong. Aside from Yoru, Sasuke was the strongest among their peers. For Sakura, the idea that Naruto could surpass Sasuke in any way, especially in chakra reserves, seemed impossible. Yoru nodded earnestly. There's no doubt about it. Naruto's chakra reserves are even greater than Kakashi-sensei's. That's one of the perks of being the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. He then asked, Naruto, your hand is completely healed now, isn't it? Not even a scar left behind. Naruto was puzzled by the question but raised his hand anyway. Why are you asking about that? Sakura and Sasuke both noticed that Naruto's previously injured hand had fully healed. They knew that it had only been a few days since Naruto had stabbed his own hand. Such a severe wound, yet it had completely healed within days without leaving even the faintest scar. Naruto, however, didn't think much of it. He had always healed quickly and assumed that was normal for everyone. Yoru explained, that's one of the physical advantages granted by the Nine Tails. Your recovery rate is extraordinary. For a normal person, an injury that severe would take months to heal. And even after healing, it would leave a scar. But look at your palm, there isn't even a mark. Naruto glanced at his hand and said, now that you mention it, there really isn't. Wait, you mean other people aren't like this? Before Yoru could answer, Sakura interjected, of course not. How could such a severe injury heal in just a few days, and without leaving a scar? Naruto, I'm honestly jealous of you. Sakura's words were sincere. As a girl, She envied the ability to heal from such a serious injury without leaving any scars. Girls care about appearances, and for someone as precocious as Sakura, it mattered even more. Sasuke, too, stared at Naruto's hand in astonishment. He hadn't realized Naruto possessed such an ability. This idiot actually has such a powerful trait. Sasuke thought to himself. Even Sasuke didn't have this kind of regenerative power. For a ninja, a profession that constantly danced on the edge of death, such an ability was invaluable. On the battlefield, it was practically like having extra lives. Under the gaze of both Sakura and Sasuke, Naruto began to feel a little smug. He grinned broadly and laughed. Really? Even Sakura is jealous of me? Am I really that amazing? Ha ha ha. Seeing Naruto's goofy smile, Sakura's initial envy suddenly dissipated. Of course. She thought, this came at the cost of his brainpower. There's nothing to be jealous of. Yorua shook his head in mild exasperation. This guy's mood changes so quickly. He thought. He was just upset a moment ago, and now he's laughing like an idiot. After laughing for a bit, Naruto looked back at Yorua and asked, so how can I take control of the Nine Tails power? If I manage that, can I really become as strong as the fourth Hokage? Sasuke and Sakura both turned to Yorua, equally curious. They cared about the answer too. After all, Naruto had always been the weakest in their squad. Even though he was now stronger than Sakura, he was still far behind Sasuke. And Sasuke had no intention of being surpassed by someone like Naruto. Surpass? Yorua waved his hand dismissively. How would I know? Don't get the wrong idea, I'm just like you. I only just graduated from the Ninja Academy myself. What I know is what Kakashi-sensei told me. As for how to control the Nine Tails, even Kakashi-sensei doesn't know. If he did, the third Hokage would have taught you long ago. Why would they wait until now? That said, I heard the previous Nine Tails Jinchuriki controlled its power using sealing techniques. The previous Nine Tails Jinchuriki was none other than the fourth Hokage's wife. And, like you, she was a member of the Uzumaki clan. Naruto froze for a moment. Then, as if realizing something, he asked, I'm part of the Uzumaki clan? Although Naruto's surname was Uzumaki, he had no idea there was an Uzumaki clan. He'd always assumed Uzumaki was just his last name. Yorua nodded. That's right, the Uzumaki clan used to be allies of Hidden Leaf Village. But the Uzumaki clan was wiped out a long time ago. If they were still around, they'd be incredibly powerful. Naruto was stunned. The Uzumaki clan isn't a Hidden Leaf Village clan? Sakura and Sasuke were also curious. They, like Naruto, had assumed Uzumaki was just Naruto's surname and didn't know about the clan. Hearing that the Uzumaki clan had been destroyed, Sasuke looked at Naruto with a hint of sympathy. He thought Naruto, like himself, was the last surviving member of a clan. Naruto, however, felt a sense of belonging upon learning he had a clan. But just as he was feeling that sense of belonging, Yorua revealed that the Uzumaki clan had been wiped out and wasn't even a Hidden Leaf Village clan. After some thought, Yorua explained, no, the Uzumaki clan was a ninja clan from the land of whirlpools, renowned for their sealing techniques. They were particularly suited to being Jinchuriki for tailed beasts. Because of that, several major nations banded together to attack and destroy the Uzumaki clan, stealing their sealing techniques. Aside from those who were killed, some members of the Uzumaki clan scattered across the world. For example, Hidden Leaf Village has had members of the Uzumaki clan. I remember that the first Hokage's wife was from the Uzumaki clan, as was the fourth Hokage's wife. And both of them served as the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Yorua wasn't divulging any secrets, this information was available in Hidden Leaf Village's public library. It was just that most people didn't pay attention to it. After all, people cared more about the Hokages themselves than about their wives. But because they were significant figures, their roles were mentioned in Hidden Leaf Village's history books. Looking at Naruto, Yorua said, so, I think if you can master the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques, you might be able to control the Nine Tails just like the Hokage's wives did. Naruto was silent for a moment before asking, but I don't know where to find the Uzumaki clan sealing techniques. Didn't you just say the clan was wiped out? Then I can't help you. Yorua admitted. I'm not much better off than you in that regard. Besides, sealing techniques are likely considered village secrets, not something ordinary people can access. However, I think the sealing technique the fourth Hokage used on you is already incredibly powerful and beneficial. If you focus on growing stronger and make good use of the fourth Hokage's sealing technique, you'll definitely be able to control the Nine Tails power someday. Remember, the Nine Tails is extraordinarily powerful. While its rampage caused massive destruction in our village, it also proved just how immense its strength is. Once you master it, your power could rival or even surpass the Hokage's level. After all, the Nine Tails is a beast so powerful that the fourth Hokage had to sacrifice his life to seal it. Even the chakra it leaks is enough to give you more chakra than Kakashi-sensei. Imagine if you fully controlled the Nine Tails chakra. Your reserves would likely be several times greater than those of the Hokage. Plus, given that both of Hidden Leaf Village's previous Nine Tails Jinchuriki were from the Uzumaki clan, it's clear that your clan's physique is particularly suited to being a Jinchuriki. You probably have an innate ability to suppress tailed beasts, you just haven't tapped into that power yet. Naruto's eyes lit up. Right now, his greatest desire was to grow stronger, defeat Yorua, and earn Kakashi's approval. Hearing that mastering the Nine Tails could give him power on par with, or even beyond, the fourth Hokage's, Naruto was deeply moved. Chapter 62 Sasuke, standing to the side, frowned as he watched Naruto's smug expression. If Naruto masters the power of the Nine Tails, he'll definitely be way stronger than me, won't he? Naruto had always been the dead last at the Ninja Academy. The thought of him surpassing Sasuke in the future was hard for Sasuke to accept. His pride wouldn't allow it. He couldn't bear the idea of Naruto outdoing him. Sasuke turned to Yorua. The technique you just used, was it something Kakashi taught you? Yorua was momentarily taken aback. He quickly realized that Sasuke probably couldn't handle the idea of Naruto surpassing him and wanted to know if Kakashi could help him grow stronger as well. Naruto caught on too, looking at Yorua with curiosity. Sakura was no different. Ever since earlier, they'd been curious about what kind of jutsu Kakashi might have taught Yorua. After some thought, Yorua said, "It's the body flicker jutsu. Once you learn precise chakra control, you'll figure it out on your own, no need for anyone to teach you." The three frowned, not quite understanding what Yorua meant. The principle behind the body flicker jutsu is actually quite simple. It's similar to the tree climbing exercise. You focus chakra at the soles of your feet to achieve high-speed movement. Sasuke considered this for a moment. The principle isn't hard to grasp, but it's probably difficult to reach the speed you showed just now, isn't it? Sasuke wasn't wrong. Yorua had used the lightning body flicker, which required infusing lightning chakra into the technique. Currently, Yorua's lightning body flicker was close to the speed of actual lightning and was even faster than Kakashi's version. Of course, Yorua wasn't going to admit that. With enough practice, you can definitely reach that speed. Sasuke didn't seem convinced and scrutinized Yorua. Your speed just now was even faster than Kakashi's. Not to mention, the lightning produced by your technique is a different color than his. Sakura, standing nearby, nodded in agreement. That's true. Yorua's speed was faster than Kakashi-sensei's, and the lightning around him had two colors. Kakashi-sensei's lightning is blue, but Yorua's was golden. Naruto laughed. Are you trying to trick us or something? I have no reason to trick you. The difference in color is just because our chakra is different, that's all. You'll understand in time. Sasuke asked, how does Kakashi-sensei have a Sharingan? Is he part of the Uchiha clan too? If Kakashi-sensei is from the Uchiha clan, then wouldn't that make him related to you, Sasuke? Naruto also turned to Yorua. Yorua felt a headache coming on. He had only brought up these topics to stay them away from asking about the techniques Kakashi had supposedly taught him. But now Sasuke had raised an even more sensitive subject. The information about the Uzumaki clan was something anyone could read in the library. Yorua had come across it before, so there was nothing odd about him knowing it. But matters related to the Uchiha clan were village secrets, and Yorua wasn't eager to discuss them. Sasuke looked at Yorua with anticipation. Deep down, Sasuke hoped Kakashi was from the Uchiha clan. That way, he wouldn't feel so alone, as if he were the only Uchiha left in Hidden Leaf Village. Naruto noticed Yorua's hesitant expression and asked, is it something you can't talk about? It's not exactly that, but, about the Uchiha clan. I don't know much about the Uchiha clan's matters either. Yorua said casually. But I can tell you this, Kakashi-sensei is not from the Uchiha clan. Sasuke's hopeful expression instantly darkened with disappointment. Sakura, on the other hand, looked puzzled. If Kakashi-sensei isn't from the Uchiha clan, then how does he have the Sharingan? Does that mean there are other clans in the Hidden Leaf Village with a Sharingan? That, I'm not sure about. Yorua replied, deliberately avoiding giving a direct answer. Before he could say more, Sasuke interjected, the Uchiha clan is the only one in the Hidden Leaf with a Sharingan. Even among the Uchiha, only a small number of people can awaken it. Then why does Kakashi-sensei have one? Naruto asked curiously. Sasuke's expression darkened slightly as he mulled it over. The answer was obvious to him, it had to be transplanted. Still, the thought left him uneasy. After all, the Sharingan belonged to his clan, and now someone outside the Uchiha clan was using it. Worse yet, He had no idea how Kakashi had came to possess it. Noticing Sasuke's discomfort, Yorua glanced at him. He could tell Sasuke was misunderstanding Kakashi's situation. Although Yorua wasn't particularly interested in discussing Uchiha matters, he also didn't want Sasuke to hold a grudge against Kakashi over a misconception. After a moment of hesitation, Yorua decided to explain. That Sharingan was transplanted into Kakashi-sensei by one of his teammates during the Third Great Ninja War. Yorua began. Kakashi-sensei's squad was ambushed during a mission, and one of his eyes was severely injured. His teammate, Unshin Uchiha, was crushed by an enemy's earth-style jutsu, which left half his body completely immobilized. Before he passed away, that teammate requested the squad's medicman to transplant his intact Sharingan into Kakashi-sensei. And that's how Kakashi-sensei came to possess the Sharingan. Yorua paused briefly before continuing. That Uchiha teammate was also Kakashi-sensei's close friend. I'm sure Kakashi-sensei has taken you to pay respects at his grave before. That's the teammate who gave him the Sharingan. Hearing Yorua's explanation, Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura all fell silent. What truly moved them wasn't the fact that Kakashi had a Sharingan, but the depth of the bond between Kakashi and his teammate, a bond strong enough to inspire such a selfless act. Sasuke began to feel guilty for his earlier assumptions. Kakashi-sensei managed to build such a fearsome reputation in the ninja world using a transplanted Sharingan. Yorua, you're right. Kakashi-sensei really is an incredible ninja. Naruto remarked, clearly impressed. Yorua smiled. Of course. Kakashi-sensei was a prodigy even when he was young. At our age, he had already become a Jonin. And he earned that rank in the middle of a war. You can imagine just how strong he is. Sasuke didn't say anything, but his respect for Kakashi grew. He couldn't help but wonder what powerful jutsu Kakashi might teach him in the future. More importantly, since Kakashi had experience using the Sharingan, there was a chance he could help Sasuke unlock its full potential. Sasuke turned his gaze toward Yorua. Yorua, do you know a lot about the Uchiha clan? You must, considering how much you know about Kakashi-sensei and the Uzumaki clan's secrets. You probably know all about the Uchiha too, don't you? Sasuke's question wasn't just idle curiosity. He genuinely lacked a clear understanding of many aspects of his own clan, including how to develop the Sharingan. Chapter 63 A new translation dropped. You can check it out at my profile or search, This Uchiha just wants to lay low. Happy readings. D. Sakura and Naruto also turned to Yorua, their curiosity about the Uchiha clan evident. They had always heard that the Uchiha clan was highly esteemed in the Hidden Leaf village. Sasuke's status as a survivor of the Uchiha clan made him popular among the villagers. At the very least, Naruto often overheard people mention Sasuke alongside the Uchiha clan. From their tone, it seemed like the Uchiha clan was an exceptionally powerful and influential family. Yorua felt a bit speechless and looked at Sasuke. You're an Uchiha, and you don't know. How would I know? But Sasuke wasn't about to let Yorua off that easily. You knew about the Uzumaki clan, and before that, I'd never even heard of it. There's no way you don't know about the Uchiha clan. Sakura and Naruto nodded in agreement. Sasuke's right. If you know about the Uzumaki clan, there's no way you wouldn't know about the Uchiha. Yorua sighed. What I know is probably about the same as what you know. Maybe even less. Sasuke wasn't convinced and pressed on. Then do you know how powerful the Sharingan really is? If I keep developing it, just how strong can it become? This was the real question Sasuke wanted answered. He wouldn't normally ask anyone else such a thing, but he respected Yorua's strength and insight. Asking him didn't feel awkward at all. Naruto and Sakura were just as intrigued. Especially Naruto, who, in imagining his own future potential, thought about surpassing Sasuke. He envisioned defeating Sasuke one day, showing Sakura how amazing he was, and winning her over. Naruto had always believed that Sakura liked Sasuke simply because Sasuke was stronger than him. Yorua waved his hand dismissively. That, I really don't know. But since the ninja world is so wary of the Sharingan, it must be incredibly powerful. Plus, the Uchiha clan used to hold significant power and prestige in the Hidden Leaf. With strength comes status. The Sharingan must be extraordinarily strong to back that up. Sasuke, however, wasn't satisfied with this vague answer. But just how strong is it? Yorua gave a wry smile. I honestly don't know. The strongest Sharingan I've ever seen is Kakashi-sensei's. It was the truth. Since arriving in this world, Yorua had only seen Kakashi's Sharingan. He hadn't even seen Sasuke awaken his Sharingan yet. Though Sasuke was dissatisfied with Yorua's response, he knew that pushing further wouldn't get him an answer. Whether Yorua truly didn't know or was keeping something hidden was unclear. When they returned to Tazuna's house, they found Kakashi already sitting at the dining table, which left Yorua with a headache. Kakashi-sensei, you're such a great teacher. Yorua remarked with thinly veiled sarcasm. Kakashi, of course, understood what Yorua was implying. It was a complaint about how Kakashi had left him to handle Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura's endless questions. Fortunately for Kakashi, his mask hid his expression. Feigning ignorance, Kakashi greeted them cheerfully. Oh, you're back. Come over and eat. Miss Tsunami has prepared a wonderful dinner for you all. Standing beside Kakashi, Tsunami smiled apologetically. It's just some simple food. I hope it's enough. Even though Yorua was still slightly annoyed at Kakashi's behavior. Yorua, though a bit annoyed, exchanged polite words with Tsunami. Tazuna, seeing Yorua, smiled and remarked, young man, you're really diligent, training so late into the night. After the previous battles, Tazuna's faith rested solely on Kakashi and Yorua. In his eyes, as long as Kakashi and Yorua were around, even if Zabuza reappeared, the assassins wouldn't stand a chance. As for Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura, he saw them as complete rookies, barely able to protect themselves, let alone anyone else. Naturally, Tazuna was particularly warm toward Yorua. Once Yorua and the others sat down, Inari peeked out from behind Tsunami, his gaze filled with mockery. You idiots will end up just like him. Inari muttered, his voice dripping with disdain. Yorua could hear him clearly, but he chose not to respond. He didn't even want to dwell on who Inari was referring to. Though Yorua had some fragmented memories about this mission, the finer details were hazy. He couldn't recall why Inari had such a pessimistic outlook. Kakashi, on the other hand, also caught Inari's words and appeared to be in thought. He wasn't angry but rather curious as to why Inari would say such things. Who exactly was that person Inari referred to? Kakashi glanced at Yorua. Seeing Yorua calmly eating as if he hadn't heard anything, Kakashi thought to himself, this kid's composure is impressive. But I bet you're already piecing together who that person is. After observing Yorua for a moment, Kakashi made no further moves and continued eating as if nothing had happened. But while Yorua and Kakashi chose to stay silent, Naruto didn't. Despite Inari's low voice, Naruto heard every word. Naruto immediately shot up, standing on his chair with a clenched fist. He glared at Inari and shouted, who are you calling an idiot? Say it clearly. Sasuke and Sakura remained quiet, but their expressions darkened. After all, they had chosen to continue this mission out of goodwill, yet Inari had insulted them. Though Sakura appeared calm on the surface, her emotions had already boiled over internally. Naruto's outburst only fueled Inari's anger. No longer hiding behind his mother, Inari jumped out and retorted, I'm talking about you. Do you even know who your opponents are? Those people are ninjas who can kill entire groups without breaking a sweat. And you think you can defeat them with just a handful of people? That's beyond stupid. You're all idiots. Especially you blonde-haired fool. Tsunami, realizing how bad the situation was getting, quickly stepped in and grabbed Inari. Inari, that's enough. Apologize to these ninja right now. Inari, with tears streaming down his face, stubbornly refused. I won't apologize. I'm just telling the truth. There's no way these people can beat those ninjas. They're just more bodies waiting to be cut down. Idiots. A bunch of idiots. Wah. The more Inari spoke, the more agitated he became. In the end, he ran off crying. The atmosphere in the room became unbearably awkward. Naruto rolled up his sleeves in frustration and shouted, that brat. How can he say something like that? I'm going to find him and set him straight. With that, Naruto stormed off in pursuit of Inari. Tsunami and Tazuna immediately began apologizing to Kakashi and the others. We're so sorry, Kakashi-san. Inari didn't mean what he said. Please forgive his rudeness. I'll apologize on his behalf. Tazuna added. Seeing that Tsunami and Tazuna were on the verge of kneeling, Kakashi quickly helped them up. There's no need for that. He's just a child. We wouldn't hold a grudge against him. Though it does seem like there's more to this than meets the eye. Kakashi added thoughtfully. Chapter 64. Tazuna sighed deeply. That child's father was killed for trying to stand up to Gato. He used to look up to his father so much, admired him greatly. Who would have thought? After Tazuna finished recounting the story of Inari and his father, Kakashi and the others finally understood. Kakashi-san, the bridge connecting us to the mainland is crucial. If we can't complete it, the land of waves will forever remain under Gato's control. Our people will never escape his cruel tyranny. Tazuna's voice trembled as tears began streaming down his face. Father, with Kakashi-san and the others here, the bridge will definitely be completed. Tsunami said softly, trying to comfort her father. Watching Tazuna's expression, Yorua's feelings were conflicted. The plight of the powerless. Those with strength can dominate the shinobi world, but those without it are nothing more than ants, even in times of peace. What kind of despair must ordinary people feel during times of war? For the first time, Yorua deeply felt the weight of powerlessness. To him, Gato was nothing more than a pest he could easily squash, yet to the people of the Land of Waves, Gato was a mountain pressing down on them, suffocating and inescapable. The Land of Waves was too poor, without even a shinobi village of its own. It wouldn't take a Jonin, just a few Chunin, or even Geinin, to completely subjugate this nation. Yorua also began to understand why, in the end, Tizuna named the bridge the Great Naruto Bridge. To others, Naruto might just be a Geinin. But to the people of the Land of Waves, Naruto was a hero who saved their entire country. Kakashi glanced at Yorua, noting his thoughtful expression, and nodded inwardly. This is exactly what I wanted Yorua to understand. In this world, so many people live humbly and struggle just to survive. The power he now possesses places him far above most others. But how he chooses to use that power, to oppress the weak or protect and uphold order, is entirely up to him. Sasuke and Sakura, however, didn't seem to feel much about Tizuna's plight. Although Sasuke had experienced the tragedy of his clan's destruction, the special care he received from the third Hokage due to Itachi's actions meant that Sasuke had never truly felt the crushing weight of oppression. At least, not within the village. As for Sakura, her experience was even more sheltered. The orderliness of Hidden Leaf Village, combined with her opportunity to attend the Ninja Academy, ensured that no one dared to bully her. After chatting with Tizuna for a while, Kakashi suggested they all rest for the night. Late at night, Yorua sat on the second-floor balcony, bathed in the moonlight, soft and white like fine sand scattered across the wooden floor. In the distance, the chirping of insects and calls of birds from the forest created a noise that paradoxically felt peaceful. Yorua stared blankly into the dark horizon, his eyes fixed on the shadows, even though there was nothing to see. After a long while, he felt someone sit down beside him. Without turning around, Yorua spoke in a soft voice. Kakashi-sensei, what kind of person do you think I'll become if I one day become the strongest in the world? The person beside him, Kakashi, paused for a moment, then lowered his head, seemingly lost in thought. I believe in you. He finally said. There was no mockery of Yorua's aspiration to become the strongest, nor any attempt to answer his question directly. But Kakashi's words brought a faint smile to Yorua's lips. Kakashi-sensei, do you really believe in me that much? Honestly, the power I've gained over these past few days has left me feeling a bit empty. Yorua said softly. I really don't know what kind of person I'll become when I grow even stronger, perhaps stronger than anyone else. What kind of person would I be then? Human desire knows no bounds. Tell me, why hasn't the shinobi world ever seen a single individual capable of suppressing an entire era? If such a person existed, what would their mindset be like? Yorua's voice carried a tinge of confusion. He knew he had a system, and he knew that one day, he might very well become the strongest shinobi in the world. The possibility was exceedingly high. But when that day came, would he really be able to stay true to himself? Or could he truly claim to have no desire for power? When you gain the ability to control an entire world, could you really maintain the same outlook you had in your youth? The pinnacle of strength inevitably brings the pinnacle of power. The thought of easily deciding the life and death of others, of having the ultimate authority over every individual in this world, it was intoxicating just to imagine. Yorua wondered if he would still be able to maintain his current, carefree mindset when he reached that level of strength. People's perspectives change as they gain more resources and power at different stages of life. Perhaps when he held ultimate power, he would look back on his current attitude of living day by day and find it foolish. After all, he was still too weak now to understand the allure of absolute control. Naturally, it made sense for him to believe he could remain as he was. But was that really true? Could he really hold on to this mindset forever? Doubt crept into Yorua's heart. Kakashi glanced at him, sighed lightly, and joined him in gazing at the distant mountains and forests. Although I can't predict what kind of person you'll become in the future, I do know one thing, you won't become someone consumed by greed and ambition. Kakashi said firmly. I trust my judgment when it comes to people. Yorua turned to look at Kakashi and smiled faintly. How can you be so sure? Because I believe in you. Kakashi replied with unwavering conviction. Yorua didn't respond further, his thoughts a mystery. Kakashi continued, the other night, the third Hokage told me about the era of the first Hokage. Want to hear about it? Yorua nodded slightly. Though he had some fragmented memories of that time, it had been 12 years, and the details were long forgotten. In the era of the first Hokage, his power was so immense that people revered him as the god of shinobi. Kakashi began recounting the story of the first Hokage's era, his voice steady and clear. Yorua listened intently, absorbing every word. After a long while, Kakashi finished his tale and turned to Yorua. Yorua, I believe you'll be like the first Hokage one day. I used to worry that the power within you might pose a threat to the village. But I'm more willing to believe that you'll use that power wisely. That you'll become a hero who protects the village, not a demon who destroys it. That's why I'll teach you everything I've learned in my lifetime. I'm betting everything on you." Yoru chuckled softly. "If I become the latter, Kakashi-sensei, you'd be in for a major loss." "Then so be it." Kakashi replied calmly. "If that day ever comes, even if I'm no match for you, I'll lay down my life to stop you. But I have faith. I'm confident that in the future, you'll make me proud as your teacher, not leave me condemned for eternity." With that, Kakashi patted Yoru's shoulder before heading back inside. Watching Kakashi's retreating figure, Yoru smiled faintly. "Who cares? The future can wait for itself. For now, I just need to stay as I am." Yoru didn't know what the future held. Maybe as he grew stronger and his desires grew, his carefree nature would change as well. But for now, living in the present was what mattered most. After all, worrying about things that hadn't happened yet was pointless and only added unnecessary stress. Chapter 65. In the following days, Yoru, Sasuke, Naruto, and Sakura worked in pairs, taking turns protecting Tazuna as he continued building the bridge. During this time, Zabuza had not made another appearance. Kakashi remained with the group assigned to guard Tazuna at all times, unwilling to take any risks given that Tazuna was the main target of their mission. Over the course of several days, Yoru had already mastered dozens of jutsu, including fully mastering the Chidori technique. At present, Yoru was studying sealing techniques under Kakashi's guidance. Even though Yoru had previously demonstrated an incredible aptitude for learning, his current pace still left Kakashi in awe. By now, Yoru had acquired enough techniques to meet the criteria for an elite Jonin. In terms of raw strength, he was already at the level of an elite Jonin. The only thing he lacked was practical combat experience. Yoru placed great importance on gaining real combat experience. Kakashi, however, believed that Yoru's current abilities already matched those of an elite Jonin. Even with limited experience, defeating Yoru in battle would be a formidable challenge for any elite Jonin. Several peaceful weeks passed without incident. One day, Yoru had just returned from training in the hills behind the house. As he approached the entrance to Tazuna's home, he immediately sensed something was off. Yoru stopped at the door, his hand pausing midair just as he was about to push it open. "So quiet," he muttered under his breath. He took a step back. In an instant, he vanished like a ghost. Almost simultaneously, Yoru reappeared inside the room they had been staying in on the second floor. He entered through the balcony, carefully channeling chakra into his feet to avoid making any noise as he stepped on the wooden floorboards. The room was as tidy as usual. Without hesitation, Yoru turned and headed downstairs. The house was unnervingly silent, completely different from how it usually was. There was no sign of Tsunami bustling around in the kitchen, nor was Inari running through the hallways. Even Sakura, who had been in her room earlier, was nowhere to be found. From the second floor to the first, Yoru saw no sign of Tsunami, Inari, or Sakura. At the dining table, Yoru noticed a letter lying there. After a moment of hesitation, he channeled chakra into his hands, forming golden gloves of chakra around them as a protective measure before picking up the envelope. Opening the letter, Yoru's expression grew grim. "So, something really has happened. Looks like someone's deliberately set a trap for me," he murmured. As he suspected, the letter was a ransom note. The kidnappers had taken Sakura, Tsunami, and Inari and demanded that Yoru meet them in the hills behind the house. If Yoru failed to show up before sunset, they threatened to kill all three hostages. Without wasting any more time, Yoru immediately made his way toward the hills. He didn't alert Kakashi and the others. There wasn't enough time. As Yoru raced toward the designated location, his expression remained heavy with thought. They even knew when I'd return from training. They must have been watching for a long time. Kidnapping Sakura and the others is just a ploy to keep me occupied. Yoru reasoned silently. Their real goal is assassinating Tazuna. Zabuza and his team must have already appeared on Kakashi's side. Yoru's mind raced as he pieced everything together. He understood perfectly. After their previous battle, Zabuza had likely realized that he couldn't defeat both Kakashi and Yoru together. By orchestrating this kidnapping, Zabuza aimed to delay Yoru. With Yoru out of the picture, Zabuza could focus solely on Kakashi, significantly increasing his chances of successfully killing Tazuna. If Yoru had any allies, things would undoubtedly become easier. Even though he was well aware of the enemy's plans, Yoru had no choice but to follow their lead. Unless he was willing to ignore Sakura and the others' safety, which he absolutely couldn't bring himself to do. Soon, Yoru arrived at the location mentioned in the letter. Deep within the forest stood a small wooden cabin. Inside, Sakura, Tsunami, and Inari were tied to wooden stakes, their bodies covered in numerous explosive tags. In front of them sat 3 rogue ninja from Hidden Mist Village. Leading them was a ninja with long green hair and sharp teeth, Kurasuke Riga, one of the rogue members of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist. Behind him stood 2 other Hidden Mist Village Chunin, his subordinates. After learning about Yorua's near Jonin level strength, Zabuza had enlisted the help of Riga, another rogue ninja from Hidden Mist Village. Gato had paid a significant price for this arrangement, adding the equivalent of an S-rank mission fee to ensure their cooperation. Though the cost made him grit his teeth, Gato was determined to stop the construction of the bridge and kill Tazuna at all costs. Riga glanced at the 3 hostages in front of him with indifference. "Don't worry," he sneered. "Once that kid shows up, I'll send all of you to your deaths. Afterward, I'll even hold a grand funeral for you." Ha ha ha. Riga let out a twisted laugh. Sakura struggled against her bonds and shouted angrily, "You green-haired freak. You won't get away with this. Once Kakashi-sensei and Yorua get here, they'll definitely take you down." Riga laughed even louder. "Ignorant little brat. Kakashi is probably dead by now, killed by Zabuza. As for that Yorua kid, I admit he's got some talent. But I have you 3 in my hands. The foolish bonds of your Hidden Leaf Village comrades mean he won't dare to ignore your safety. No matter how fast he is, he can't be faster than the explosion of these tags covering you. What a pity. That kid really is a genius. And yet, he's going to die here trying to save an idiotic little girl like you. What a waste." For the past few days, Riga and his subordinates had been carefully observing Yorua. They were well aware of the progress Yorua had made in his training. If not for taking Sakura hostage, Riga wouldn't have been confident in his ability to kill Yorua. But now, with 3 hostages in his hands, and after observing the apparent bond between Yorua and Sakura, Riga was certain Yorua wouldn't abandon her. This was his trump card. On top of that, he wielded the twin lightning blades, Kiba. As a former member of the 7 ninja swordsmen of the mist, his strength, bolstered by the Kiba blades, was on par with, if not greater than, a typical elite Jonin. With the assistance of his 2 Chunin subordinates, Riga couldn't imagine how he could possibly lose. Inari, hearing Riga's words, couldn't help but think of his father. Wasn't this exactly how his father had died? Recalling what Naruto had said to him that day, Inari's heart sank into despair. After all, there's no such thing as heroes in this world. Anyone who tries to be a hero is just a fool who's bound to die. They're all overconfident. People are always so overconfident. Tears streamed down Inari's face as he muttered to himself. That glimmer of hope he'd felt after Naruto's encouragement had been completely shattered. Inari was utterly broken. Tsunami's face was pale. She understood the meaning behind Riga's words. She knew they were doomed. To her, Yorua and Sasuke were just children. No matter how talented they were, how strong could they really be? Kakashi was likely already entangled with another group of ninja. And her father? He had probably been killed by the enemy's assassins. Having already lost her husband, and now her father, Tsunami was overwhelmed by despair, unable to utter a single word. Chapter 66. Riga's words pushed Sakura into despair. She had already witnessed Zabuza's strength during their previous encounter. Back then, if it hadn't been for Yorua assisting Kakashi, even Kakashi might not have been able to defeat Zabuza. If Yorua was held up here, Kakashi might lose against Zabuza, and Tazuna would be killed. And Yorua might also lose his life trying to save her. Even if he managed to survive here, by the time Zabuza finished assassinating Tazuna and came back, Yorua would have to face 2 Jonin. There was no way he could win. It was a hopeless situation. Sakura's face contorted in anguish. No way. Yorua definitely won't fall for your trap. He'll see through your plan. She desperately tried to convince herself that Yorua wouldn't simply walk into Riga's trap. Riga burst into laughter. Little girl, even if he sees through my plan, does he really have a choice? Riga's words left Sakura speechless. He was right. Did Yorua even have a choice? Could he really abandon her and go to Kakashi instead? Seeing Sakura's silence, Riga smirked. Will he choose to complete the mission or save his comrades? From what I've observed over the past few days, that kid is most likely going to choose saving you. No. He wouldn't. He'll definitely go to Kakashi-sensei. Sakura shook her head, praying Yorua wouldn't come. This was a death trap. If he came here, he'd only die along with them. More than anything, Sakura didn't want Yorua to come. On a normal day, she might have wanted to feel important to Yorua, to hold a closer bond with him, even as just a friend. But in a matter of life and death, she wanted Yorua to live. She didn't want him to die with her. She couldn't bear the thought of Yorua stepping into this blatant trap. Just imagining Yorua arriving, only to die alongside her in a fiery explosion, brought tears to her eyes. Even though she was the only ninja among the 3, Sakura couldn't stop herself from crying. She didn't want Yorua to come. Yorua, you're not coming, right? You're a brilliant ninja. Surely you'll prioritize the mission, right? We're just temporary teammates. I can't possibly mean that much to you, can I? Sakura sobbed as she spoke. Watching her cry, Riga sneered, why are you crying? Isn't it a good thing to have a talented comrade accompanying you on your way to hell? Sakura ignored him, staring out the window and silently praying Yorua wouldn't come. She even wished he hadn't found the letter. Did you forget what Kakashi-sensei told you during the test, Sakura? Just as Riga finished speaking, Yorua's voice echoed from outside the cabin. You actually came, kid. Riga said, his tone laced with mockery. The moment Yorua's voice reached her ears, Riga instantly moved behind Sakura. The twin lightning blades rested against her neck. At the same time, the two Chunin appeared behind Tsunami and Inari, holding kunai to their throats. For a fleeting moment, Sakura felt a spark of joy upon hearing Yorua's voice, but it was quickly replaced by utter despair. Tears streamed down her face as she screamed, Yorua, no. Why did you come? You must have known this was a trap. Why did you still come? Yorua stepped slowly into the cabin, his gaze sweeping across the room with calm composure. He spoke lightly, I know it's a trap, but as that guy said, I don't have a choice. He spread his hands nonchalantly. Yorua's demeanor was calm, but to the two Chunin from the hidden mist village, he exuded an overwhelming sense of danger. It felt as though he could end their lives at any moment, even though he was just a genin. Recalling their observations over the past days, the two Chunin swallowed nervously, their eyes fixed on Yorua in trepidation. They didn't dare treat him like an ordinary genin. The boy in front of them was incredibly dangerous, capable of defeating them in an instant. Even Riga Kurisuke wasn't taking him lightly. Sakura, tears streaming down her face, stared at Yorua. She hadn't wanted him to come. Yorua glanced at Riga. Looks like your strength is on par with Sabuza's. You're a jonin, right? Hidden Mist sure has a lot of rogue ninja. And powerful ones at that. Yorua quipped, seemingly unaware of his precarious situation. Riga's expression grew solemn. Kid, you're only here to die with that foolish girl. What a pity. Yorua chuckled lightly. What makes you so sure I'm the one who'll die? Riga laughed mockingly. Haven't you noticed anything strange about this area? I've been observing you for quite some time. Do you think I'm unaware of your abilities? I'm not foolish enough to confront you head-on. Even if I won, it would be exhausting. I've set up a massive trap. Within a 100-meter radius of this cabin, I've planted countless explosive tags. Especially inside this cabin, there are hundreds of them. It's enough to ensure you and that girl are reduced to nothing. Yorua listened to Riga's words without any surprise. He had already sensed it the moment he stepped inside. Within 100 meters of the cabin, steel wires rigged with explosive tags were everywhere. If detonated, they could obliterate all life in the area. But with Sakura, Tsunami, and Inari here, what could he do? Could he just walk away? He couldn't. With so many explosive tags around, wouldn't you also get caught in the blast? Yorua asked. Riga sneered. Kid, do you really think I'd be stupid enough to place myself in the middle of the trap? Yorua clapped his hands. Not bad. Looks like you've done your homework on me. You've set up a trap I can't avoid. Enough talk, kid. Take your foolish decision and go to hell. Detonate. Riga didn't want to waste any more time with Yorua, fearing the longer he delayed, the greater the risk. At that exact moment, Yorua's eyes narrowed, and his chakra surged instantly. Lightning style, thunder web. Wind style, air burst. Water style, water formation wall. ZT. Hum. Crash. Boom. 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 With Riga's command, all the explosive tags detonated simultaneously. The violent explosion obliterated the cabin entirely, creating a mushroom cloud dozens of meters high. The shockwave uprooted massive trees hundreds of meters away, while smoke and dust filled the sky. The ground trembled as if a major earthquake had struck. After a long time, the smoke finally cleared, revealing a landscape riddled with craters. Riga, along with the two Chunin, emerged from behind a large tree several hundred meters away. Riga chuckled, what a beautiful explosion. It's just a shame about the loss of such a young talent. Well then, let me give you a grand funeral and send you off with dignity. Chapter 67 Riga arrived at the center of the explosion with two Chunin in tow. The blast had left a massive crater spanning dozens of meters in width. But as Riga approached the edge of the pit, his eyes caught sight of three shimmering golden water spheres at the crater's center. What are those? One of the Chunin asked in confusion. A sense of unease crept over Riga. Be cautious. That brat isn't so easy to deal with, he said with a grave expression, suspecting that the earlier explosion hadn't killed Yorua. Impossible. With an explosion like that, even a Kage wouldn't survive. The two Chunin exclaimed in disbelief. After all, they had planted thousands of explosive tags in the area. An explosion of such magnitude would be enough to obliterate even a Kage-level shinobi. Riga drew his thunder blades. Without responding to the Chunin, he kept his eyes locked on the three golden water spheres at the center of the pit. When the spheres remained motionless after a while, Riga could no longer contain himself. He immediately launched an attack. Lightning style, thunder strike. Crack. ZZ. Riga crossed his thunder blades, causing blue arcs of lightning to dance across their surfaces. As he channeled chakra into the blades, the arcs grew larger, transforming into a thick beam of lightning that he directed toward the golden water spheres. This was a lightning-style technique enhanced by the thunder blades. The blades allowed Riga to easily unleash lightning-style techniques while consuming far less chakra than normal. The powerful lightning beam shot toward one of the water spheres, its destructive energy capable of pulverizing a massive boulder. Yet, the moment the lightning struck the water sphere, it was completely absorbed. The golden water sphere behaved like a black hole, swallowing the lightning beam entirely as though it had never existed. This eerie sight left Riga and the two Chunin utterly stunned. What is that thing? A monster, maybe? Even Riga-sama's lightning style got absorbed. What in the world is that thing? The two Chunin stammered, their voices filled with panic. Riga's expression darkened as he began to piece things together. Scanning the surroundings, he roared, "Brat, stop hiding. I know this is your doing. Show yourself." Riga was furious. He was certain Yoru was responsible. The fact that Yoru was still alive, despite his meticulously planned death trap, left him both shocked and enraged. Not only had Yoru survived, but he had also left behind these strange objects to mock him. Riga couldn't stand it. The charred and desolate area was eerily silent. Riga's expression grew even more serious. The sensation of being watched unnerved him deeply. He wasn't used to being the one under surveillance, he was always the predator in the shadows. Damn it, you troublesome brat. Even a death trap couldn't kill you. What kind of monster are you? Riga muttered grimly. Riga-sama, you don't actually think that kid survived an explosion like that, do you? Don't joke about something like that. One of the Chunin said, his voice trembling. The mere thought of Yoru surviving the explosion sent shivers down their spines. If Yoru could survive such a devastating blast, just how terrifying was he? They were terrified of the monster. After all, they were merely two Chunin. Even if they teamed up, they were not confident they could defeat Yoru. Over the past few days, they had followed Riga, keeping an eye on Yoru. They were fully aware of just how fearsome Yoru's strength was. Ignoring the two Chunin, Riga fixed his gaze on the three water spheres in the center of the crater. If you won't come out, I'll force you out. With that, Riga unleashed another lightning-style jutsu, lightning-style, Thunder Fang. As Riga completed the jutsu, a massive amount of lightning began to gather in the sky. The lightning rapidly condensed into dozens of blue arcs, which surged outward in all directions. Crack. Boom. 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 Countless lightning arcs obliterated everything in their path, leaving nothing intact. The destructive power was terrifying. This was the strength of the Thunder Blades. They amplified the user's lightning-style jutsu several-fold. This is the power of the Thunder Blades. Haha, Riga-sama is finally going all out. That brat wasn't killed by the explosion earlier, but now he'll definitely die by Riga-sama's hands. One of the Chunin exclaimed excitedly. The two Chunin, who had been afraid Yoru might still be alive, felt a surge of confidence at the sight of Riga's overwhelming lightning-style jutsu. In their minds, even if Yoru had survived earlier, there was no way he could withstand Riga's onslaught. After all, Riga was a former member of the Seven Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, a powerful elite Jonin. There was no way a mere child like Yoru could defeat him. The surrounding area was ravaged by the unrelenting lightning, which continued to pour from the thunder blades in an awe-inspiring display. Yet Yoru still did not appear. Instead, the three water spheres at the center of the crater began to gradually dissolve. Crack. The sound of glass shattering made Riga halt his actions. His eyes were fixed on the three golden glowing water spheres in the crater. As the golden substance covering the water spheres slowly peeled away, what was inside was finally revealed. When Riga saw the face emerging from within one of the spheres, he froze in shock. She's alive? That girl is still alive? What kind of joke is this? If that brat survived, fine. But why is that girl still alive too? I clearly stuck over 20 explosive tags on her, enough to blast her into pieces. Damn it. What's going on? Riga couldn't believe it. The person revealed beneath the water sphere was none other than Sakura. What shocked him even more was that Sakura was completely unharmed. As the glass-like material covering her body fell away, Sakura's entire figure was revealed, completely intact without a single scratch. It was utterly unbelievable. Rukongai couldn't fathom it. After all, he had attached so many explosive tags directly to Sakura's body. How could she possibly have survived? He refused to believe it. This is impossible. Absolutely impossible. This must be Genjutsu. It's that brat's Genjutsu. No way. Rukongai muttered, his hands trembling. He couldn't believe such a bizarre event was even possible. Those explosive tags were stuck directly onto that girl. There's no way anyone could have removed them all in such a short time. Rukai's understanding of the world was completely shaken. Crack. As the water sphere around Sakura completely dissolved, the other two spheres began to dissolve as well. Sakura herself was utterly bewildered. For a moment, she had thought she was dead. She had even regretted dragging Yorua down with her in her final moments. Sakura shook her hand, and the sharp pain snapped her back to reality. It's not a dream. I'm alive. I actually survived. Even with so many explosive tags going off at once, I survived. Wait, what about Yorua? I wonder how Yorua is doing. Chapter 68. As the water spheres completely dissolved from their bodies, Tsunami and Inari stood there, utterly dumbfounded. They looked at their hands, unable to comprehend how they were still alive. We're actually alive. What's going on here? Tsunami murmured, looking around. The ground around them was scorched black. It seemed they were standing in the middle of a massive crater surrounded by charred earth. The soil was still steaming, and the acrid smell of burning lingered in the air. But the fact that they were alive was far more pressing than the unpleasant smell. Inari's thoughts raced as he recalled what Tazuna had told him earlier. It's him. It has to be him. He's the one who saved us. Inari muttered, immediately thinking of Yorua. Before this, he hadn't believed what Tazuna said. He didn't think Yorua and the others could defeat the ninja hired by Gato. When he and his mother were captured, his doubts only deepened, and he had even silently mocked Naruto for the words he had spoken to him earlier. But now, here he was, alive, and it was Yorua who had saved him. Yorua really had the power to save them. How could someone the same age as Naruto be so strong? If his father had been as strong as Yorua back then, would he still be alive today? As these thoughts swirled in his mind, Inari suddenly realized Yorua was nowhere to be seen. He looked around but couldn't find Yorua's figure anywhere. All he could see was Rukongai in the distance, raging and flailing about, clearly furious. Mom, was it really him who saved us? Inari looked toward his mother. Tsunami nodded. Who else could it be? Meanwhile, on the other side, Sakura scanned her surroundings, but she couldn't see any sign of Yorua. Her concern grew stronger. Yorua! Where are you? She cried out, her voice breaking. She was genuinely worried that Yorua had been caught in the explosion. Despite the life-threatening danger, despite knowing he might die, Yorua had still saved her. Anyone would feel deeply moved in such a situation. Especially since she and Yorua had no real connection before. In her most desperate moment, Yorua had appeared, risking his life to save hers. But after so long with no response and no sight of Yorua, Sakura began to fear the worst. She dropped to her knees, overwhelmed with guilt and sorrow. It's all because of me. I got you killed. Before she could finish speaking, a sudden blur appeared before her eyes. Why are you crying? I'm not dead yet. Hearing that familiar voice, Sakura's entire body jolted. She looked up. Standing before her was a figure whose silhouette looked just like Yorua. Why Yorua? You're alive. What? You're alive? Tsunami and Inari exclaimed from nearby, their voices filled with shock. Both of them were utterly stunned. After such a massive explosion, Yorua had somehow survived. Their shock quickly turned to joy. Sakura stood up and ran toward Yorua, but he stopped her with a firm hand on her shoulder. That's enough. Look after Aunt Tsunami and Inari. Yorua said, his tone calm but firm. I've been training for so long, and now I want to test the results of that training. That guy is a jonin, and I'm not entirely confident I can beat him. I'll just have to hold on until Kakashi-sensei gets here. Yorua said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. Hearing this, Sakura, though still emotional, swallowed her feelings and nodded. Even though she felt a twinge of sadness, she obediently stepped aside and stood protectively near Tsunami and Inari. Standing in front of Inari, Sakura said firmly, don't worry, I'll definitely protect them. Yorua, however, didn't pay much attention to her words. Sakura's current strength was too weak, and assigning her to protect Inari and Tsunami was essentially just giving her something to do so she wouldn't get in the way. Otherwise, Yorua would have to divert his focus to take care of them, and against Rukongai, he didn't have the confidence to win. Meanwhile, Tsunami and Inari had grown to trust Yorua deeply. Even under the earlier devastating explosion, Yorua had managed to protect them. They couldn't imagine him losing now. Inari, in particular, had transformed from his previously despondent state into someone who looked at Yorua with admiration. Clenching his fist, he shouted, "Big brother Yorua, you've got this. I'll protect Mom and make sure I don't cause you any trouble." "Good." Yorua replied with a faint smile. Although he hadn't interacted much with Inari over the past few days and had barely exchanged a few words, he acknowledged Inari's resolve. Sakura gazed at Yorua's back, her expression shifting. At this moment, Yorua radiated an overwhelming sense of security. "Yorua, be careful. I'll take care of them, so you can focus on the fight," Sakura said seriously. Yorua nodded slightly. From his pouch, he pulled out a kunai. With a faint crackle, golden arcs of lightning surged around the blade in an instant. "Whoa, it's lightning. And it's golden. Big brother Yorua is so cool." Inari's jaw dropped in amazement, his face filled with envy and awe. Indeed, Yorua's display was nothing short of dazzling. Sakura, on the other hand, knew how powerful this technique truly was. He can release such strong lightning style without even forming hand seals. Yorua's already leagues ahead of us. Sakura thought to herself. She understood that among the 5 elemental chakra natures, lightning style was one of the most powerful but also one of the hardest to control.